It's up to you guys. Hey, Dylan said this is going to be tough. Right. Shouldn't be. I don't think so. You already have one guy on the outfit. I can hear any outfit. Lena's not here. Yeah. So now he's the one that controls it. So, Ryan Cannon wears a secretary. Oh, no, I didn't know that. Okay.
I was told that.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. May I have your attention? We have a stacked agenda. We'll be moving fairly quickly, so I asked everybody to be ready. Please be organized. Have your comments prepared. One announcement as we start. 2022 ZON 012, which is 4903, 4907 Winthrop. I'm moving to the top of the agenda. It will be our first hearing, so we will address that immediately. As I call the meeting to order, I'd ask everybody to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
From which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Members of the Commission, you received last Thursday the minutes from the April 20th, 2022 meeting. You've had an opportunity to review those. Are there any additions or deletions to those minutes? Seeing none. Commissioner Garber, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Commissioner Schumacher, can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the minutes have been passed. Moving forward, Madam Secretary, can you read the resolutions into the minutes, please?
Yes, thank you, President Dillon. Resolution number 2022E019 authorizes DMD to acquire and prepare real estate right-of-way necessary to support redevelopment in the area near 402 Kentucky Avenue, and for such costs to be paid from the redevelopment project funds. Resolution number 2022A007 authorizes a preliminary economic revitalization area for Gershman Partners located at approximately 6407 through 6419 Ferguson Street, Council District 2, Washington Township. recommends approval of 10 years real property tax abatement. Resolution number 2022-A016 for public hearing authorizes a final economic revitalization area for Aero Container LLC located at 6550 East 30th Street, Council District 13, Warren Township. Recommends approval of 7 years personal property tax abatement. Resolution number 2022-C003 authorizes the director to enter into a grant agreement with Southeast Neighborhood Development Incorporated for the development of a permanent supportive housing facility utilizing $400,000 from the Housing Trust Fund previously approved in resolution number 2021-C003. Resolution number 2022-P006 amends the rules of procedure of the Metropolitan Development Commission Hearing Officer and Plat Committee of Marion County, Indiana, provides for amendments required by state law and various other amendments related to functions of the commission. This ends the reading of the resolutions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I understand we have a early continuance request on 2022 P006.
Correct. Mr. President, members of the commission, staff would request that we continue 2022 P006 resolution for rules of procedure to be heard or to be considered on your May 18th hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Pleasant. Members of the commission, that is the reason we continue to review those, and we're looking back for comments from you all. So, Commissioner Schumacher, I'll take a motion to move that to the
May 18th without notice.
May 18th without notice.
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson, can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, hearing none. We have in front of us 2022 E019, 2022 A007, 2022 C003, which do not stand for public hearing, that I'd like to take as a group. Commissioner Sum, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Westrick, can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Let me call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, yes.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is an aye. It passes 8-0. All three resolutions pass 8-0. Moving forward for our public hearing, resolution number 2022-A016 authorizes a final economic revitalization area for the Aero Container LLC located at 6550 East 30th Street, Council District number 13, Warren Township. It recommends approval of a 7-year personal property tax abatement. Members of the commission, we've had this presented to us now 3 times. Is there a member from staff, Matt, who will be talking about this on recommendation? Falls to you, Matt.
We're looking at resolution 2022 A018.
We're looking at resolution number 2022-A016.
I'm sorry, 16. You're right.
I don't see Ryan Hunt here.
I don't either. I will say that staff is supportive of this. I cannot answer like absolute details of the agreement, but I do know that staff is supportive of this resolution.
Fortunately, Mr. Pleasant, this has been presented 3 times to members of the commission. Do any commission members have any questions? Hearing none. I will take a motion from Commissioner Westrick to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Garver, can I get a second?
Second.
Let me call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, yes.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is a yes. It passes 8-0. Moving forward, I'm looking for any requested continuances, withdrawals, or special requests. Sir, introduce yourself and your name, address.
Anthony Sires, representing client for 16, Anthony Sires at 530 East Ohio Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204. Civil Environmental Consultants representing the petitioner for 1601, 1605, and 1609, Dr. A.J. Brown Avenue. Formally request to withdraw this petition in its entirety.
Thank you. So noted. It has been withdrawn.
Good afternoon, President Dillon, Commissioners Misha, Rabinowitz, with offices at 1 Indiana Square, Suite 1800. Direct your attention to the first item on the petitions to be automatically continued to June 1st, 2022. This is case number 2022 ZON 017, 2022 VAR 002, 1621, 1625, and 1631 West 86th Street. This case was recommended for approval by the hearing examiner on April 14th of 2022 with no opposition on the expedited agenda. On April 19, 2022, Mr. Clark Kahlo filed a notice of appeal even though he did not appear at the hearing and did not otherwise file any type of written remonstrance. Mr. Kahlo does not reside anywhere near the subject property. The property is on 86th Street, and his residence, as shown on his notice of appeal, is at 4454 Washington Boulevard. Subsequent to the filing of the notice of appeal on April 25, 2022, an organization known as Meridian Kessler Neighbors Helping Neighbors filed a request for automatic continuance. Again, this organization is nowhere near the property. Its boundaries, as shown on the city's website, is within Meridian Kessler and Broad Ripple, and no representative of Meridian Kessler Neighbors Helping Neighbors appeared at the hearing examiner hearing. It's the petitioner's position that the notice of appeal is improper because he is not, because the party that filed that, Mr. Kahlo, is not an interested party entitled to file an appeal under the MDC rules, specifically rule number 6, and the automatic continuance is improper for the same reason, under MDC rule of procedure 8B. As a courtesy, last Friday I did call Mr. Kahlo. I told him I was going to make these points to the commission, and I also emailed him yesterday to let him know I would be here, so he had the opportunity. I don't know if he's here.
Is Clark here? I do not see him. Members of the commission, under Rule 6, you have to be a party to get the continuance and to move it past. Under Rule 6, what I think we should do, and I've consulted with Counselor, is to move, make sure I get my right site, 2022 ZON 017 and 2022 VAR 002 back to the petitions of no appeals for our next meeting, which would be, Matt, when is that? May 18th, is that right? Oh. I can? Yeah. Thank you. I've just been informed by council, I don't have to wait until the next meeting. We can do it today. So, Nancy, my motion to the group is to move it to today's docket of no appeals. I will take a motion, I will make the motion myself to move 2022 ZON 017, 2022 VAR 002 to the docket petitions of no appeals. Commissioner Robinson, can I get a second?
Second.
Let me call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, yes.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is a yes. It's moved to today's docket petitions of no appeal, 8-0. For people in the audience, the rules are very clear. You've got to participate and be a party to the hearing in order to have standing. There was no standing. Continue, Counselor. You have another one?
No.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Metzel. I'm an attorney at the Taft Law Firm with offices located at 1 Indiana Square, Suite 3500, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204.
welcome.
Thank you. It's going to be a little like Groundhog Day here. I'm making a request strikingly similar to Counselor Rabinowitz. I represent the folks at Washington Park Cemetery Association. 2 petitions on your petitions for public hearing docket, 2022 CZN 810 and 2022 CVR 810, companion petitions. We were seeking a rezoning and also a variance to make the property SU10 compatible with cemetery uses that have been in the area for over 100 years. After we appeared for hearing before your hearing examiner on April the 14th, we were recommended for approval with no opposition in writing or in person. We received an after-the-fact appeal from Mr. Callow. He has represented in numerous documents to me that he is representing Protect Our Streams Now, also himself, and from time to time he'll reference Murday and Kessler Neighborhood Association, Neighbors Helping Neighbors, excuse me. No one from any of those organizations and Mr. Callow appeared for that hearing. They didn't file anything in writing in opposition. I also believe that he does not have standing to, 1, appeal, or 2, file an automatic continuance, which he did do, and which you can see from your docket. It is asterisk there, and he did file one. We believe that both of those are invalid, as he does not have standing to do so, and would request that we be placed back on your petitions for appeals, or petitions for approval with no appeals.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Mr. Pleasant, you agree?
Yeah, after talking to our legal counsel and reviewing the procedures of what happened in the history of this site, we agree with Counselor Menzel.
Can I make sure I make a point to you and staff? This should have been caught before it came to us.
I don't disagree. And after
Thank
we took
you.
some time to discuss, we got this taken care of, and I won't happen again.
Thank you. Members of the commission, I've talked with our attorney, Mr. Moore. He's in agreement that Rule 6 once again applies. I don't think in all of our time we've had these two type issues come forward. I will make the motion that, are there any questions from members of the commission? Hearing none. I will make the motion to move 2022 CZN 810, 2022 CVR 810 to the schedule of today's petition of no appeals. Madam Secretary, you've got that? Great. I've made the motion. Commissioner Bruns, can I get a second?
Bruns, second.
Thank you. Let me call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, yes.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is a yes. It's moved to the docket of no appeals for today. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, President Dillon, members of the Commission. Paul Lambie, office address 1026 North Midhofer Road, Indianapolis 46229. Here on petition 2022 ZON 012 at 4903 and 4903 Guilford Avenue. I'll try to be quick in my request. I do want to tell you I was just brought on yesterday, although I do have some background knowledge on this petition. I was brought on as a volunteer yesterday to assist remonstrators. I'm here to make some comments on the technical zoning aspects of the case from the remonstrator's perspective, but the main remonstrator's representative, who lives across the street from the petition, is not present yet, and she's able to speak to the actual neighbors' firsthand concerns about this request. So my request to you is that this be heard in its normal order as it was presented on the agenda. Dr. Rice, who is the main spokesperson for the remonstrators, was held up at work this morning. She's going to be here, I anticipate, within the next half hour, but I want to make sure she's able to speak on this petition.
Thank you for making your point. We're going to move forward on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Are there any other requests, withdrawals, continuances? Kathleen.
Thank you, President Dillon. Members of the commission, staff would draw your attention to, it's an automatic continuance that has been filed on 2022. It's the last petition on your petitions for public hearing. 2022 ZON 029 located at 27 East 86th Street and 8755 Haverstick Road and 2925 Sinclair Woods Drive. A timely automatic continuance has been filed by a registered neighborhood organization and continuing this to June 1st hearing, and that would just require your acknowledgement.
So noted.
Thank you. And I believe that the petitioner for 2022 ZON 028 located at 4020 East 21st Street, I believe he is present, and it was my understanding he's there. There we go.
Sorry, President Dillon. I thought those continuances were going to be read by the staff. Again, David Kingan with offices at 6180 East Market Street, here on case 2022 ZON 028, property located at 4020 East 21st Street. We have filed a written request to continue this petition to your June 1st public hearing without additional notice. This is a request because we are now exploring the property next door to join this petition, and we need additional time for that to take place. So our request again is to continue to June 1st without additional notice. We know of no remonstrance on this.
Thank you. Alpha, can I get a motion to move 2022 ZON 028 to the June 1st meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson, can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Let me call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, aye.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is a yes. It's moved to June 1st. Thank you.
Thank you.
Final continuances.
President Dillon, members of the commission, staff would draw your attention to two petitions that are on the no appeals, and both of them need to be continued to the May 18th hearing, pending receipt of executed commitments. The first being 2022 MOD 002, located at 1533 Lewis Street, and again, continuing it to the May 18th for the receipt of commitments, and that would require a motion and a vote.
Thank you. Can I get a motion from Commissioner Robinson on 2022 MOD 002 to move that to May 18th?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Commissioner Schumacher.
Second.
Let me call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, aye.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is a yes. It moves unanimously to May 18th. Kathleen.
And the second one and last one is 2022 ZON 007 with various addresses on Barth Avenue, and again, continuing it to the May 18th hearing, pending receipt of commitments.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Bruns, can I get a motion to move 2022 ZON 007 to the May 18th meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Selm, can I get a second?
Second.
Let me call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, aye.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is an aye. It's moved unanimously to May 18th.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other continuances, withdrawals, or special requests? Seeing none. Nancy, can you read the docket of no appeals into the record?
Yes, thank you, President Dillon. This is the amended petitions recommended for approval by the hearing examiner. 2022 APP 001 at 6840 Eagle Highlands Way, Pike Township, Council District 10. 2022 APP 002 7979 North Shadeland Avenue, Lawrence Township, Council District 4. 2022 APP 003 at 1500 North Ritter Avenue, Warren Township, Council District 12. 2022 APP 004 at 8102 Clear Vista Parkway, Lawrence Township, Council District 4. 2022 ZON 004 at 5530 and 5540 South East Street, Perry Township, Council District 23. 2022 ZON 026 at 4825 East 82nd Street, Washington Township, Council District 3. 2022 ZON 042 at 1825, 1861, and 1919 Montcalm Street, Center Township, Council District 11. 2022 CZN 811 at 1009 Fletcher Avenue, Center Township, Council District 16. Also, petitions 2022 ZON 017, 2022 VAR 002 at 1621, 1625, and 1631 West 86th Street, Washington Township, Council District 1. 2022 CZN 810 and 2022 CVR 810 at 425 North Holt Road and 3500 Castle Road, Wayne Township, Council District 15. This ends the reading of the no appeals docket.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Members of the Commission, do you have any questions on any of the petitions of no appeals? Staff, Matt, you have any comments?
No additional comments.
Thank you very much. Before us, we have 8 petitions of no appeals that have been read into the record. Commissioner Garver, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Commissioner Selm, can I get a second?
Second.
Let me call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, yes.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is a yes. The petitions of no appeals pass 8-0. Nancy, I want to go with 2022 ZON 012. Can you read that into the minutes, please?
Yes, thank you, President Dillon. Our first petition for public hearing is a rezoning petition recommended for approval by the hearing examiner, appeal filed by remonstrator. 2022 ZON 012 at 49003 and 4907 Winthrop Avenue, approximate addresses, Warren Township, Council District 9. Petitioner is Overdose Lifeline Incorporated by Michael Ravinovich, requesting a rezoning of 0.33 acre from the CSW1 district to the CSW1 district to permit a residential facility for women in recovery. Will all those intending to testify on this petition this afternoon, either for or against, would you please stand now and raise your right hand to be sworn in?
All remonstrators, please stand to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
To the petitioners and remonstrators, let me describe to you the rules of engagement. The petitioner will be given 15 minutes to present their case. I will then come to the remonstrators, who will have 15 minutes to present their case. I then will ask staff for comments, and they will walk through the matter from their perspective. I'll go back to the petitioner for a 5-minute rebuttal, and I'll conclude with a 5-minute rebuttal of the remonstrators. I know this is an emotional petition. We run a very strict decorum in this chamber. I ask that you honor that and remain professional at all times. Counselor, please introduce yourself. You're on the shot clock. You have 15 minutes.
Yes, thank you, President Dillon, Commissioners. Misha Rabinowitz, offices at 1 Indiana Square, Suite 1800. I represent a nonprofit organization called Overdose Lifeline. which is an organization dedicated to helping individuals, families, and communities affected by the disease of substance use disorder. Here with me today is its founder, Justin Phillips, its Chief Operating Officer, Keith Bevan, and a number of others from Overdose Lifeline and other supporters of this project. Also here is Becky Buhner, who's the Deputy Director of Addiction and Forensic Treatment for the State of Indiana Division of Mental Health and Addiction. In fact, in your materials, there's a letter to the file, a letter of support from Doug Hunsinger, the state's drug czar, on behalf of Governor Eric Holcomb, indicating his strong support for this project. There are also representatives of Meridian Kessler Neighborhood Association who have offered their letter of support. At this time, I think it'd be appropriate to recognize and have the folks that are in support of this project to stand. Thank you. There's also a letter of support in your materials from City Councilor William Oliver. Commissioners, in 2020, substance use disorder took the lives of more than 90,000 Americans. Overdose Lifeline is helping literally hundreds of families afflicted by this disease. It's a remarkable organization supported by the state of Indiana and the city of Indianapolis. In furtherance of its mission, and the materials, the written materials generally track what's on the screen with some additional items. So if you can't see what's on the screen, they're all in the materials in front of you. In furtherance of its mission, with this petition, Overdose Lifeline seeks to rezone the two residences at 4903 and 4907 Winthrop Avenue, which is just east of College Avenue, from the CS District to the CS District to permit operation as a women's recovery home for women afflicted by substance use disorder and their young children. As your hearing examiner pointed out in her positive recommendation of this request, these two homes are perfectly suited for this use because in 2013, pursuant to a rezoning from D8 to CS, the properties were configured as a hostel, housing up to 42 guests with lots of outdoor common area space. In fact, the proposed Women's Recovery Center would be a much less intense use than what is currently permitted, with a maximum of 20 residents at a time. Moreover, it is rare, and we'll explain how why, it is rare that any of these women, given the stages they are in their lives, have cars. So the parking demand would be lower than what is currently permitted. So why this location? Seems to be that everybody can agree that this is a good use. The issue seems to be location. First of all, as I mentioned, the houses are already prearranged for this type of living because it was previously used as a hostel. The northern house, which is the smaller house you see in the photographs, is equipped with 3 bedrooms and 2 full baths. The southern house, which is the red house, is equipped with essentially 5 bedrooms and 4.5 baths. We've included at tab 3 floor plans for the layouts of each floor in each of the houses and where each of a resident bed could be located so that you can orient yourself with the layout internally. We've also included at tab 5 requirements from the National Association of Recovery Residences, which include requirements as to how much living space should be allocated or must be allocated to each resident. These residences more than accommodate 20 residents. The next reason why this is a suitable location is its proximity to public transit. Many of these women will be taking public transit, and there is the red line that goes north and south on College, less than a mile away. Also, there's shared common area space. These are photographs of the area between the two houses, which was previously configured in this manner, so that there's outdoor space for small children and individuals to recreate and have outdoor time. The next reason is that it's less than 3 blocks from the Carvel Club at 46th and Carvel. For those of you that are not familiar with the Carvel Club, it's been in the neighborhood for a very long time. It's a location where AA meetings and other counseling type meetings are organized and held, and it is close enough that these women will be able to walk to it. Most importantly, though, these are women that want to engage in and be a part of the community, and these are women that deserve a nice community just like everybody else that lives in the neighborhood. A little bit about the CS zoning that's being requested. As you know, CS zoning is a defined zoning classification defined by the development plan that we have submitted. The existing zoning permits the hostel, but it also permits concerts, event center, flea market, and other uses. The use that we are proposing is limited only to the women's recovery facility for Overdose Lifeline, and if that for some reason didn't work out, the use would revert to single-family housing. So the intensity of the use that we are proposing is significantly less than what is currently permitted. Other important points from the development statement. As I said, the current use permits 38 to 42 guests, whereas Overdose, our Overdose Lifeline's proposed use will have a maximum of 20 residents, and that includes the women and their young children, and these are children that are under 2 years old. There'll be a trained staff person on site 24 hours per day with 2 staff members present during business hours. As I mentioned before, the parking needs are significantly less than what is currently permitted. Overdose Lifeline, after a meeting with neighbors, did some research with other recovery houses in Indianapolis and came to sort of an informal survey result that 5% of these women would have cars. For 20 residents, that's 1 car. There's a 2-car garage. There are 4 spaces in the driveway, so that's 6 spaces. And then, of course, as everybody knows, in the area, there is on-street parking available. Frankly, I've seen some shocking statements in writing and in our meetings from the remonstrators. It's important that this commission understand what we are and what we are not. This is a house for women and their children that provides a supportive, safe environment promoting abstinence-based recovery. These are women who have already been through a first phase of rehabilitation. This is not a rehabilitation center. These women are sober. There will be no drugs or alcohol permitted on site. It's not a drug treatment center. It's not a detoxification location. It's not a halfway house or a medical facility. I alluded earlier to the National Association of Recovery Residences certification that this house will have, and those, again, those requirements are at tab 5, and then the required documents that must be submitted are at tab 6, and then a good neighbor policy, which, despite all the contention of this case, I want to make sure the commissioners here know that Overdose Lifeline has every intention of being a good neighbor and engaging with everyone. That is the purpose of locating this project where it is, and that's important to Overdose Lifeline. I wanted to talk about safety and security of prescription medications. Some of these residents will have prescription medications, but the NAR standards include very strict requirements on how those are stored. Each individual will have a lockbox that can only be accessed by that individual. Those lockboxes, and that's where the prescription drugs will be located, those lockboxes will then be in a locked room, accessible only by a staff person. So if a resident needs to access their prescriptions, there will be a process for doing so. They will be in a safe and secure location. I also wanted to address the concern I've heard from neighbors regarding the proximity of this location to other bars, liquor stores, places where alcohol can be obtained along College Avenue. And I direct your attention specifically to tab 12. Tab 12 is a letter from Dr. Timothy Kelly. Dr. Kelly is the medical director for Addiction Treatment Services for Community Health Network. He was director of medical services for Fairbanks for over 20 years. He's devoted his career to the field of addiction medicine. Dr. Kelly is here today, and he's certainly more qualified than me and likely anyone else in this room to speak on this topic, but I would direct your attention to his statement in his letter. As a board-certified physician and someone who has treated individuals with substance use disorder for over 30 years, I can testify that the proximity of this proposed recovery residence to alcohol establishments is not a trigger for them to relapse, and the success of their recovery is not contingent on the location, but rather the program within the residence. I anticipate that Dr. Kelly will speak during the rebuttal portion of our presentation here today, and I'm sure he will gladly answer questions you may have on this topic. Wanted to just mention briefly the community support that we've received. As I said, there's a letter of support from the Reading-Kessler Neighborhood Association, from Councilor Oliver and Doug Hunsinger, the state's drug czar, on behalf of the governor, and a number of letters of support from neighbors, which are in your materials at tab 11. With a couple of minutes I have left, there's a neighbor who's in the 4800 block of Winthrop. Her name is Katie Montgomery, and I'd like her to just provide her thoughts to you. She has some experience in this field.
Please introduce yourself and your address.
Hi, my name is Katie Montgomery, and my address is 4817 Winthrop Avenue. I'm here today as both a community member and someone who works in the addiction and recovery field. As a case manager for people struggling with substance use disorder, the recovery housing we are discussing here today is very exciting to me. There's a great need for recovery housing that is suitable for women and their children, and it's something that we're lacking in Indianapolis currently. The location for this housing is great for many reasons, including the proximity to public transportation and the previous use as a hospital. As a case manager who often refers clients to recovery housing, I would be thrilled for this location to be an option for women and their children. I'm very familiar with the neighborhood for the recovery housing we're speaking of. My house is within eyesight of the location. As a close neighbor, I have zero concerns about safety as a result of this recovery housing. Women in recovery and the recovery housing itself do not pose a danger to our community. I'm very excited for our neighborhood to be a safe and welcoming place for these women and their children. Thank you.
Kate, as you're the home with the support the recovery house, is that their sign?
There are a few in our neighborhood, but yes, I do have one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Dillon. With that, we'd ask that you approve the petition for rezoning following the staff's positive recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hang tight, Counselor. Questions from the Commission for the petitioner?
President Dillon, I have one. Counselor, what's the referral process like for these types of programs?
That best be answered by the executive director of Overdose Lifeline, Justin Phillips. So we'll have her.
Thank you.
Welcome, Justin. Please
Good
give us your address.
Justin Phillips, 10546 Pine Valley Path, Indianapolis 46234. Our referrals come from those agencies that serve these women initially. So that could be the drug court, that could be a treatment center, that could be another recovery residence. The Dove House, for example, is a recovery residence for women here in Indianapolis that has a 4 to 6 month waiting list. So we will help to serve their waiting list. So those would be our referral sources.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of the Commission? My turn. Counselor, I walked the neighborhood Sunday when it stopped raining and Saturday drove it. Here's where you got to get me convinced. Parking is not easy in that neighborhood. I'm so proud of how those residents have brought that neighborhood back, and it's really starting to flourish. But parking is tough. And on Winthrop, there were no spots on the west side of the street where everybody parks, right? So I want to hear one more time, what's the availability of parking for these two facilities? Because I didn't notice any in 4309 or 4307 unless it's behind it, which I kind of glanced behind it, but
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, a couple of points. First, as I said, the parking volume, anticipated parking volume for these women, given their stage of life, is 5% of residents. So that's one car. Then you got 2 staff people, and there are 6 on-site parking spaces. So
Counselor, how many cars are you going to park in the facility, on the property?
Well, there's a capacity for 6.
You're going to use how
2 or
many
3
spots?
easy. What's that?
How many spots are you going to use?
Well, there are 2 staff people during the day, and then there may be 1 to 3 cars that could use those additional spaces. There's also, occasionally we probably were there at different times, but maybe you have to walk a bit, but there is parking on Winthrop. And let me add one other point. We've had recent communication with the owner of Winthrop Supply, which is
Dead East,
and his response was, you're welcome to use our parking when we are closed. So that is in the evenings, and that is on the weekends. And visiting hours for this facility will be on Sunday afternoon. So that provides some additional relief.
And Sunday afternoon, they're closed, correct?
Right.
Secondly, concern. This esteemed board has approved a couple of these previously, and the manager, the non-for-profit running the organization, which is the position that Overdose will be in, opened up, started it, pulled out. I'm very interested in Overdose's financial security to continue to be a consistent manager of the property and convince me they're going to take care of that property like all the other neighbors in the neighborhood are.
Let me, before I have Ms. Phillips address the financial status, that was a concern of the Meridian Kessler Neighborhood Association as well. And there is a commitment that Overdose Lifeline has agreed to, that if they were to cease being the operator of this location, the matter of a new operator would have to go back before the association to determine whether they are an appropriate operator. So that provides some protection. Justin, do you want to address Commissioner Dillon's question about the financial condition of Overdose Lifeline?
Good afternoon again. We have an operating budget at Overdose Lifeline of $3 million, and we have secured funding for this particular program for 3 years for operating dollars of $700,000. And we know that we will qualify as a certified recovery residence for programs run by the state such as Recovery Works and contracts with the Department of Child Services to help offset the costs of some of the women. Our model will be that after they maintain stabilization, which we consider to be between 30 and 45 days, that they will then be able to work and on a sliding scale contribute to their own rent and expenses.
How long have you been in business?
2014.
And your future business plan shows growth and continuing moving forward?
Yes.
And how long is the business plan?
Our current strategic plan is 3 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Counselor, one more thought for you. The letter I'm reading, you introduced, we had a letter from the governor. It's on behalf of the governor. It's not from the governor.
Right.
Thank you. Will the remonstrators please come forward? Counselor, stay close. We'll be back to you. Will the remonstrators please come forward? Just reminding you the rules of engagement. You have a total of 15 minutes. Please introduce yourself. Make sure you say you were duly sworn. Address, you're on the shot clock, go. You're on the clock, sir. Let's go.
Thank you, President Dillon, members of the commission. Paul Lambie again, office at 1026 North Midhofer Road, Indianapolis 46229. Here today assisting remonstrators in this matter. We have no reason to think that the petitioners have anything but the best of intentions in attempting to help struggling women. That intent and effort is laudable. We all want the best for women battling addiction. And the petitioner, they may be able to run a successful operation. That's not for us to judge, despite this apparently being their first attempt at running such an operation. However, it's not the charge of this commission to approve inappropriate locations for such facilities just because there is a need in the community. As Mr. Rabinowitz said, and I would agree, it's not about whether anybody thinks this is not something that's needed in our community. The question is whether this is an appropriate location. This process is to determine the appropriate zoning for these two parcels. There are plenty of parcels throughout Marion County that are zoned to allow this type of operation by right, where they wouldn't need to come before this commission or the Board of Zoning Appeals or anybody for any discretionary approval, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Unfortunately, this is not one of those locations where this is a permitted use. This is a D5 zone neighborhood. D5 is a single and two-family, exclusively single and two-family zoning district. This particular site was zoned D5 until 2013, when it was rezoned for the hostel and associated uses. The staff has indicated to me that this is judged as a transitional living quarters, which has a definition in the ordinance, and it has a set of zoning districts where it is allowed. In the packet that was handed out, behind the red tab, there should be a copy of the use table from page 386 of the Consolidated Zoning Ordinance. If you look at the bottom, it's highlighted transitional living quarters. It indicates where those are allowed by our ordinance, which was just rewritten from front to back, top to bottom, and adopted, I think, in the last 8 years. D6, D7, D9, D10, those all allow this use by right without a public hearing. Those are all exclusively multifamily districts. Those multifamily zoning districts are required to be separated and buffered from exclusively single and two-family zoning districts, as the Indy rezone process determined just 8 years ago. And again, many of you know I was on staff back in the 2000s. I don't believe that there was a definition or a defined use for transitional living at that time before the Indy rezone process went through. So it's worth noting that when the Indy rezone process went through, a matter of a couple years of work, task force, many committees, and going through this body for approval, it was determined we need a place for transitional living quarters. And it was determined that those exclusively multifamily districts were most appropriate. However, as you can see on the use table, it also can be permitted by special exception in the D8 district. The D8 district is more intense than the D5 district, which this neighborhood is zoned. The D8 district, in addition to single and two-family, allows multifamily. It was determined through Indy rezone that D8 could be an appropriate place for a transitional living quarters if a grant of special exception was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The existence of the CS zoning for a hostel, which has gone away and is extremely unlikely to be reopened, whether this petition is approved or denied, it should not open the door for more uses that are prohibited in a D5 neighborhood, in which the zoning ordinance itself indicates are not compatible with exclusively single and two-family zoning districts. Essentially, this is a spot zoning. A spot zoning is where you grant a different, higher amount of property rights to one property, different from all the surrounding properties, even though they have the same characteristics. What is unique about these two houses? I looked at the floor plans, and in my experience as a real estate broker for the last 8 years, I don't see anything there that makes these houses not able to be used for single-family residential uses. with just minor modifications. If you take out all the beds that are there, they look pretty much like floor plans I see every day as a realtor. Even though there's a CS zoning in place, and maybe that was an inappropriate spot zoning in 2013, that's not a reason to do another inappropriate CS spot zoning in 2022. If the city is concerned about getting rid of the hostile use, which I know that was mentioned, I believe, by the petitioner and by staff at the hearing examiner hearing, there's already a remedy for that. The commission, through its staff, could initiate a rezoning of this property from CS back to D5. It's been vacant for a couple years. I don't believe there'd be any concern about any uses being grandfathered, because in order for a use to be grandfathered, it's got to be in continuous operation. So if D5 is the more appropriate zoning for this property, which we believe it is, it should be rezoned back to D5. We do have a couple of commitments that we've submitted that should be in the packet, I believe, behind the red tab. One is that if the commission feels that it's appropriate to give this a try, we would ask that there be a commitment limiting this use for a temporary period of 1 year, which would require the petitioner to come back within a year and file an approval petition to try to modify or terminate that commitment. If they can come back and show that this is working and it's not having a lot of negative impacts on the neighborhood, then that shouldn't be a problem. The other two commitments that we've asked for relate to the number of people, the number of residents on site. I know the petitioner's development statement mentions they anticipate no more than 18 to 20 women, but they also are talking about having their children there. We've asked for a maximum of 14 residents, which would be 2 per bedroom, and then allowing for children as well. The third commitment would basically say that if a woman and her children are in one of the bedrooms, then you wouldn't put a second unrelated woman in that bedroom to prevent overcrowding. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Amy Rice to talk some more about the neighbors' particular firsthand concerns, and I'll be available if you have questions after that.
Thank you, Paul. Please introduce yourself, your address.
Yep, I'm Dr. Rice. I live at 4850 Winthrop. Good afternoon, President Dillon and commissioners. If you have the packet, just flip to the front of it. I just want to talk to you briefly about the use of the hostel property itself. So I've been in contact with John Newton, the former owner of the Indy Hostel, and they had no more than 12 residents there at a time. So that was the practical use. They were talking about placing 20 women, which is a much more intensive use. The hostel travelers were gone most of the day, so they were sort of there to sleep only and out sightseeing, and these women are going to be on lockdown for 30 days, unable to leave the facility.
Excuse me,
Yes,
could
please.
you speak closer to the microphone?
Absolutely. Do I need to begin over, or? Yeah, okay. So I've been in touch with John Newton, the former owner of the Indy Hostel, and he had informed me that they had not more than 12 guests there at a time. So that was the practical use of the hostel. And having lived across the street, I can attest to the veracity of that. The petitioner is proposing to place 20 women at the facility, and they're not to leave the building for 30 days while they're on lockdown. Obviously, hostelers who were visiting international travelers were out and about most of the day and didn't come back but to sleep at night, so it was largely empty during the day. The hostel had one staff person. The petitioner is proposing to have one person there 24/7 and then 5 to 7 staff that are there throughout the day offering classes. So the difference between one staff and 5 to 7 staff is pretty clear. The hostel had between 1 and at most 3 cars. And because they're not willing to tell the residents of this proposed facility to not bring a car, there could be up to 27 cars in addition to guests. I understand it's very difficult to litigate, to control the number of cars that are at a facility. So we have to account for the possibility that there may be up to 27 cars at this facility. If you turn to the next page, I just want you guys to be aware that there have been a lot of accidents at this facility, at this intersection, I apologize. I've put stars where the accidents have occurred. Pets have been run over, houses have been crashed into. It's a difficult intersection. Go ahead and turn the page and you can see part of why that is. The street jogs over, so it heads north and then it jogs towards the west going northward. So it's a confusing intersection for people who don't know the area. If you turn the page again, we can see that Overdose Lifeline's plan for parking is much like some of their other plans, not very carefully thought through. If you can imagine, in the picture here, we're seeing 6 cars parked in a 2-car garage driveway. So what they have proposed to us, the neighborhood who are concerned about parking, is that they're going to be backing out into this already dangerous intersection throughout the day as their 5 to 7 staff members come and go. So we are obviously very concerned about this given the number of accidents and the dangerous nature of this intersection already. Go ahead and turn the page to look at the parking. I've drawn a diagram because I feel like when we say there's already a parking problem, it's hard for you guys to understand because you don't live there. So I've drawn a diagram here. You can see there are 11 free spots on this jog of Winthrop. And when you count, there are 19 residential properties that share 11 parking places. So obviously this is already an issue. I hope you can appreciate, because most of these people are residents. We're talking a boyfriend, girlfriend, a husband, wife. Many of these properties are moms and dads with 2 kids. So they already have 2 cars. So we're talking probably 40 cars for 11 parking places. All right, go ahead and turn the page again. I just wanted to give you a sense of what the day looks like at Winthrop Supply. They open at 7 a.m. and they close at 4:30, and that part of the street is busy nonstop. You often just bypass it altogether and don't try to go through because there are trucks, buses. It's a lot. It's a very busy area. Now, if you turn the page again, one of our longtime residents, Beverly, wants to make a proposition about what the city might be able to do to help alleviate parking. Beverly, you want to step forward?
Hi.
Please introduce yourself and your address.
My name is Beverly Cox. I live at 5010 Winthrop Avenue. I also own the properties 5016 and 5018 Winthrop Avenue, and I've been there for 43 years. I have lived through the really rough times in this neighborhood, and I have been very active, especially in the early years, trying to change the neighborhood, and I'm very grateful that it has made that turnaround. What I wanted to talk about was the parking. We are already, it's already problematic with one side of the street parking. The vehicles from the 9 residences on the west side of the 4900 block on Winthrop Avenue mostly fill up the 11 available parking spaces and the 1 handicap space. The east side of the 4900 block of Winthrop Avenue consists of the 2 houses to be used for the rehab facility and 5 duplexes. 50th Street ends at the corner of Winthrop Avenue. It's on diagram 7 if you want to look at it. There is an unpaved roadway that goes beyond the corner of 50th Street and Winthrop Avenue, leading to an overgrown lot that backs up to the Monon Trail. And there's a small parking area, and I'm assuming the owners of those 5 duplexes created that area. And it accommodates some, but not all, of the vehicles of the tenants in the 10 residences of those 5 duplexes. Winthrop cannot accommodate an influx of cars from 4 to 6 staff, plus up to 20 resident cars, and any number of visitors that are unknown. Yet Winthrop residents are being told that we have no recourse if this becomes a problem. I feel that the rehab facility owners and/or the city, if this is approved by the city, ought to bear or share the expense of clearing and developing a parking area for the rehab facility out of that overgrown area that is at the end of 50th Street between the Monon Trail and what is this gravel dirt driveway that got put in. The current residents living on Winthrop Avenue should not be displaced with their parking because of rezoning to accommodate potential.
Beverly, I'm sorry, you've reached your time limit.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I do have a quick question for Dr. Rice. Your statistics that you gave was one facility. This is 2 houses now.
Oh, no, the statistics were the 2 houses. The Indy Hostel was the 2 houses throughout this process.
I want to make sure I'm clear on that.
That's right, yeah.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of the commission for remonstrators? Please stand by. We'll ask you to come back in a second. Staff.
Thank you, President Dillon, members of the commission. Staff is recommending approval of this request. Just to be clear, this site is not zoned D5 or D8. It is zoned CS. CS is a district that permits multi-use commercial complexes and or land use combinations of commercial and non-commercial uses. So this is again zoned a CS, which permits those types of uses. And just to be clear, what's currently permitted on this in the 2013 rezoning is a hostel, a yoga fitness facility and studio, an employee apartment, an indoor-outdoor event center for weddings, small parties, festivals, concerts, recitals with live entertainment, outdoor flea market, outside cooking and dining for hostel occupants and guests, single-family dwelling units, neighborhood crime watch meetings, and with a detached garage expansion, a second-floor dwelling unit. So that's what is permitted at this point on this site. What they are requesting, staff believes, is much less intense. We're talking about mothers with children. And when you look at the comprehensive plan recommendation, which is traditional neighborhood, this is consistent with that. And as you know, staff supports generally the comprehensive plan. Again, traditional neighborhood, because it allows single family up to large scale multifamily. Staff again believes that this is a much less intense use than what is currently permitted. Yes, you've got the hostel that they have talked about, but there were a lot of other uses that are permitted on here, and I just read those off. The other thing staff would like to note, and this is important, is the counselor for that district is recommending approval and supports this. Again, staff believes this is an appropriate rezoning. Staff also believes that the parking that and yes, recognizing that there is an issue with parking, but staff believes, and the petitioner's representative has also commented about that, there's going to be much less parking needs than what is maybe anticipated by some of the residents. Because you've got the red line, many of these residents will not have automobiles. They have other issues in their lives that they are dealing with. But again, staff is recommending approval of this and would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for staff? I have one. I think the commission needs to know about the allocation of funds that the city council, and Matt helped me with the program, that have been allocated already.
Cdbg and Arpa funds.
You got to talk into the mic, Matt.
Cdbg, the Central Business District funds that are held by the federal government that are allocated to the city have specific programs that they can fund it to. This was one of them. The other one was ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, had allocated funds. This is another section, so the council has allocated funds to this site.
So in the event that this petition is passed, those allocated funds would go to this project with $600,000?
Yeah, it's somewhere between 600 and 750.
Thank you. Final questions for staff? Petitioner, 5 minutes. Rebuttal. You're on the clock, Councilor.
Thank you, President Dillon. I think staff did a nice job of responding to the zoning issues. The property is already zoned for a more intense use than is currently permitted. Also, you have to recognize the context. There is residential to the north and to the west. There's also industrial, pretty heavy industrial, to the east and to the south. That shouldn't go without recognition. I want to use the balance of the time for you to hear from the Executive Director of Overdose Lifeline, Justin Phillips, to address some of these issues.
Thank you, President Dillon and Commissioners. Justin Phillips. I'm a clinical addictions counselor, and I've been in recovery myself since 1989. I understand the challenges that women face, and proximity to alcohol and other serving establishments is not what's going to cause a challenge for me, and the proximity to the Carvel Club is important. The remonstrators have shared that we will have 5 to 7 staff during the day. I don't really know where that number comes from. That's not something that we have ever said. We will have 2 staff on duty during the day and 1 staff overnight. And we also are not going to put the women on lockdown. Again, we are not a rehabilitation facility. We are going to provide the women with 30 days of stabilization, which means that they won't have contact with the outside world, social media, those kinds of things. And we will be providing them with programming and not require them to get employment outside of the home. So those are the things I wanted to address specifically, and then I would ask Dr. Kelly to come up and share with you why this need is so great from his professional experience and the experience he has with working with another recovery house for women in the city.
Before you leave,
yes.
Before you leave the microphone, I'd like to commend you for the work that you have put into this and to thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the reminder that we've been working on this project as a board and a staff for 3 years, so we have put a great deal of thought and time into this planning. Thank you so much.
Please introduce yourself, doctor, and your address.
Timothy Kelly, MD. My office is at 7250 Clear Vista Drive, Community North Campus, Indianapolis 46256. I just wanted to say that I've been doing this work for over 30 years, and this level of care is the most deficient level, and many people fail because they leave higher levels of care, which are more expensive, and have to go back to unsupportive situations. These women not only have a substance use disorder, the vast majority, I would say in the ballpark of 90%, have post-traumatic stress disorder, suffering childhood and or adult violence, abuse, trauma. The Dove House, I believe in this level of care so much that I volunteer. I have volunteered at both the Progress House and the Dove House. Those 2 models, those 2 programs are considered sort of the gold standard for our area for sober living facilities. They're in challenged neighborhoods, probably more so than this one. They do outstanding work. Judge Salinas at the Marion County Drug Court reserves something like 6 or 8 beds at the Dove House and constantly keeps those beds full because he wants people to have a fighting chance. I'm less worried about drinking establishments being near this facility, and I'm more thrilled about that it's 6 blocks from the Carvel Club AA facility. This Overdose Lifeline has won awards for the excellence of its program. It's financially solvent. It will not run a shoddy operation. It will be clean. There will probably be more active substance abuse in the homes of the people, in the residences around it, than there will be in this. Broad Ripple and South Broad Ripple, my old neighborhood, I went to St. Joan of Arc grade school. I lived on Carrollton Avenue. I know this neighborhood well, and I know the Carvel Club well. I come from an Irish Catholic family. My high school's motto was men and women for others. I firmly believe that we're here to help the less fortunate and those who suffer and not slam the door in their face. I'm thrilled about this project. I believe it will be run extremely well. I believe there'll be cognizant and compassionate about the needs of the people around them and not just disturb the lives of others in the neighborhood. Justin's track record would substantiate that. This level of care is such a bang for the buck. If you look at how much it costs to lock people up in prisons, it's somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 a year in certain correctional facilities. This facility is going to be self-supporting largely. I'm excited. This level of care, I can't even name one program.
Dr. Kelly, thank you for your testimony. You've reached your time.
Thank you, sir.
Final questions for the petitioner. Hearing none, would the remonstrators please come forward? Paul, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you again, President Dillon and members of the commission. We heard the staff comments. Again, it sounded like the staff is supporting this because they think somehow it's less intense than the hostile use and that this is the only way to get rid of the permitted hostile use. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. It's not. They know that. You guys know that the staff and the city can initiate a rezoning to rezone this property back to D5 without the consent of the property owner. Especially, there's no better time to do that when it's vacant, and it's clear that these are 2 single-family homes and they could be used as such. If there's really a concern, now I don't think that's really a big concern, but if there's really a concern that a hostile use could go back in here, there is a process to rezone the property back to D5, just like the rest of the entire neighborhood, except for these 2 parcels and the plumbing supply business that's been there for decades. I don't like to come here and argue with the staff or cast aspersions on their recommendations, but I do feel like I need to present the facts as I see them. And I can tell when the staff possibly is recommending approval of something that they might not necessarily recommend approval of if it were not for the fact that the city, their sister agency, has already committed over $1 million of taxpayer funds to this project without finding a location that is actually zoned appropriately. I wasn't going to go into that, but Mr. Pleasant mentioned the grant funds. I think you asked him. That's okay. I think he meant community development block grants.
Thank you for letting me ask about that.
Sure. And I've seen this when I was on staff back in the 2000s, and it continues apparently to be a problem today, that one part of DMD commits support and incentives to a project without either taking the care to find out if it's zoned appropriately to go in at that location, or just assuming that they can just expect the planning staff to go along and approve whatever they've come up with. It is a concern. I would think that it would be a concern for this commission as well. And what we're looking for is consistency in the actions of the boards and commissions, as well as the recommendations of staff. I'm going to quickly mention there was a case for transitional living quarters that was heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals February 15th, 2022, petition 2021 SE3003. Behind your red tab is the staff report. Petitioner at 2659 Sutherland Avenue in the D8 zoning district, where this use is actually contemplated by Indy Rezone, our new consolidated zoning ordinance, as possibly being a good location by grant of special exception. Petitioner sought special exception, sought to have 16 women, sounds familiar, in transitional housing in 2 structures that had 8 bedrooms. And the staff recommendation was that the number of residents at this transitional housing facility should be limited to just 8. Just 8. But today they're saying that having 18 to 20 women in 2 structures with 7 bedrooms, and if you look at the floor plans, the lower level is the basement. They tend to have 6 beds in one basement and I believe 8 beds in another basement. It shows the overdevelopment of this proposal, that the site just can't handle it. As has been mentioned, parking is going to be an issue. They say they have 6 parking spaces. They're triple stacked, so you can only get to 2 of those spaces at any one time without having to back out 1 or 2 other cars. It's just not going to work. We do ask that if you are inclined to want to support this, that you make a motion to impose the commitments that we have offered that would essentially, most importantly, to make this temporary so that we can judge in a year if it is approved, if it's working. Without a commitment like that, this goes in, and no matter how it works out, it's permanent. They can stay forever. And I just want to turn it back over to Dr. Rice to touch on the sentiment of the immediate neighbors.
Dr. Rice, you're running close, so hurry.
Absolutely. I'd like you to take a look at the map. I have 70 signatures by local residents who all oppose this petition. I also have 5 local businesses who have signed on. And if you zoom out, you can start to see some of the supporters. The supporters are distant to the property, and people who are opposing this are the immediate neighbors. The petitioner has made a very poor, I would say 0, genuine effort to reach out to the community. 4 times we've had meetings. The first one was essentially a closed meeting because no one in our zone was invited to the Meridian Kessler Land Use Committee meeting. And I happened to be one of the 3 people who was there. I pleaded with them to let them know that nobody in our neighborhood knew about it, but they went ahead and voted in support, which does not reflect the views of my neighborhood. We reached out to the petitioner to have a meeting after that, and were told when they discovered that I had invited neighbors that they were
Dr. Rice, I'm sorry, you've made your time.
ambushed by an angry mob that is my local community.
Thank you very much. Kathleen, final comments?
Thank you, President Dillon. Staff has no further comments.
Thank you. I'm going to the commission. 2022 ZON 012 is before us. I'd ask Commissioner Bruns to make a motion to approve.
Bruns, so move.
Commissioner Garver, a second.
Garver, second.
I will now call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn approves.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Schumacher.
Yes.
Selm.
Selm, no.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon. I'm going to go yes. It passes, the petitioner passes 7-1. Counselor, I need you in Overdose at the podium, please. I also need Beverly Cox at the podium, please. Counselor.
Yes.
You and I have always played ball together, making sure you follow up on everything we've asked you to do. You've done a good job on that. As you know, I pay attention to what this commission approves. Please, please make sure your people do a good job. I respect everything that's been said from the neighborhood. Pay attention to the parking. Pay attention to making sure those facilities are taken care of. And don't let me down. You haven't before, and I hope you don't this time. To the members of Overdose, please do a good job. Please. Beverly, can you come forward? I thought you had a couple good ideas on parking. I will follow up with myself with Department of Public Works. I'll bring them out there myself, and we'll see if we can figure out something to get some relief on that issue.
Okay, that
To the
would be
members
awesome.
of the neighborhood, thank you
That
for
would be
being
awesome.
here.
Thank you.
Well, Beverly, I thought your points were well taken. Thank you for being here. We'll move forward to our next hearing. Commissioner Schumacher, you've got to go, I think. Thank you very much. Counselor, and you know I'll be paying attention, so tell your...
Well, thank you. We'll keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Nancy, our next hearing, please.
Yes, returning to our order, the next petition for public hearing is a variance of use and development standards petition recommended for approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals 2. Appeal filed by the administrator, 2022 UV2005, 6360 Guilford Avenue, approximate address, Washington Township, Council District 2, Zone C4FF TOD. Petitioner is Audio Chuck by David Gilman, requesting a variance of use and development standards of the Consolidated Zoning and Subdivision Ordinance to provide for a surface parking lot not permitted in a transit-oriented development overlay district with a 3.5-foot tall block wall within the clear sight triangles, a 20-foot wide drive aisle, minimum 23-foot width required, and an 18-foot long parking spaces, 20-foot length required. Will all those intending to testify on this variance of use and development standard petition, will you please stand now and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Those that are speaking for and against the petition, all testifying. Mr. Clark? Let me see who else is here. I'm sorry, I just have a hard time seeing through here. Let's go, Tom Healy, okay. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Say, I do. Thank you.
Mr. Clark, can you introduce yourself, your address, please, and you're on the shot clock. 15 minutes for your presentation, 15 minutes from the remonstrator. We'll then go to staff. We'll come back to you for 5 minutes rebuttal, 5 minutes rebuttal to the remonstrators. Mr. Clark, go.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. Indeed, for the record, my name is Murray Clark with offices at 300 North Meridian Street, and I represent the petitioner in this matter, Audio Chuck. This is an appeal, as Nancy mentioned, made by staff of the Board of Zoning Appeals variance grant regarding the property currently zoned C4 at 6360 Guilford Avenue in Broad Ripple. With me today are Kevin Mills, the president of Audio Chuck, David Gilman with Land Development Services, and Jordan Dillon, the executive director of the Broad Ripple Village Association, we commonly know as BRVA. Our variance was approved by the BZA on April 12th, and aside from the recommendation by staff, there was no opposition or remonstrator there at that time. David has passed out copies of our PowerPoint. They're also on the screens. I would invite you to follow along. My presentation will follow along, certainly. Next tab, please, Nancy, or whomever. Next slide. Thank you. First, a bit about Audio Chuck. As you can see from the memo David also passed out, that we provided members of the commission. Audio Chuck is truly an amazing organization and exactly the type of business Indianapolis, the city of Indianapolis, justifiably desires and pursues. It is a media company focused on edge-of-your-seat storytelling, immensely popular with today's generation of podcast listeners. The business and culture of Audio Chuck are centered around the passionate use of its platform to make a positive difference in people's lives by advocating for victims and families of criminal acts and criminal violence. In fact, its well-known weekly true crime podcast, Crime Junkie, if you've heard about it, is in the top 5 most listened to podcasts in the world, amazingly enough. Unique to this type of international business is that there are no set hours of operation, and many show producers and staffers work well into the late evenings. Employing parking is critical. The podcast media industry is largely located on the coasts, New York and Los Angeles. Audio Chuck's vision, however, is to locate in Indiana, where its matriarch, Ashley Flowers, resides, and it really is a perfect fit in the edgy and creative Broad Ripple commercial scene. Next slide, please. Audio Chuck's offices are currently located at the new G Block building across the street from the subject property. Audio Chuck is underparked at the G Block office building and looks to utilize on a temporary basis the property at 6360 Guilford, outlined in red on this slide. To do so, and to grow its business here, a variance is needed, most notably a variance of the Transit-Oriented Development Secondary District, or as we call it briefly, TOD. It is worthwhile noting that Audio Chuck entered into its lease for office space at the G Block building on October 4th of last year, realizing it would likely need additional parking at some point in time, but unaware of any discussion of a TOD. A month later, the TOD ordinance was enacted. Note also the Malnati Pizzeria surface parking to the southwest of this site on this slide that was approved by variance last November in case number 2021 UV2-016. Next slide, please. Indicated in the area outlined in light green on this slide, east of College Avenue in Broad Ripple, is the territory there that is within the TOD. that applies to all lots within 1,000 feet from the center line of the College Avenue bus rapid transit line. As you can see, our site, outlined on this slide in blue, is 900 feet or more away from the bus line. Therefore, the subject location is on the very edge or periphery of the TOD territory. A pretty important fact to be sure, but particularly since, as I recall, when the new TOD ordinance was first reviewed by this commission, consideration was given to reducing the TOD territory distance scope from 1,000 feet to 500 feet or something in that neighborhood. That was not the end result, but had it been, we would not be having this TOD discussion, since a commercial parking lot like this is a permitted use within the C4 zoning classification. If my recollection is incorrect, I apologize, but I do know there was concern here about the expansiveness of the TOD territory, particularly as it impacted Broad Ripple. At this time, Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Kevin Mills. With your indulgence, introduce Kevin Mills, the president of Audio Check, for a few comments.
Councilor, quick question. You got me confused. It's not their present location is not across the street. It's about a half block or block down, is it not?
Catty corner.
It's catty corner.
Yeah. So the G Block building is the northeast corner of Main Street in Guilford, and theirs is the southeast corner. North and southwest corner. Excuse me. Yeah.
Who is the other audio company that's behind it?
Do you know?
Okay. Thank you. I got it. Catty corner. Got it. Please introduce yourself and your address.
Yes, my name is Kevin Mills. Address is at 6507 Carrollton Avenue, Indianapolis, 46220.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Would really like to just tell you a little bit about who we are. I recently relocated from Los Angeles, and I live in Broad Ripple, and we are growing as not just a podcast company, but a media company, and we're having a really strong impact in the community, and it's what we are absolutely committed to do. As was mentioned, we actually have it's the second largest, most listened to podcast, and we are growing. We now have a network of 12 shows, and we'll grow that to 20 shows. Again, all of them focused on victims and advocacy, and really providing a difference, not just in our community, but across the globe. So I just really wanted to give a little bit of an indication of how committed we are to Broad Ripple and to building the best media company right here.
How many employees do you have?
Currently have 25 employees.
I got to tell you what, you all done a hell of a job building that company. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right. Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. President. And to be clear, the G Block is where they signed the lease for their offices in October. So have you made the total relocation yet to G Block building? In the process of,
That now makes sense. I got it.
My confusion, your confusion was due to the way I presented it. So next slide is tab 5. The next several slides will provide specifics and development standards proposed for the parking lot. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide presents an overhead look at the proposed development with Main Street to the north and Guilford Avenue to the east. Note the G Block building, office building, Catty Corner to the northeast. Next slide, please. This is a site plan for this commercial, private commercial lot serving Audio Chuck personnel. Note the thoughtful way the 15 spaces are planned with an electric charging station and small car spaces. Next slide, please. This is an overhead rendering showing the site and improvements outside the walls of the lot, including 16 bike racks. Several tables and benches are planned on the street frontages of both Main Street and Guilford. Next slide, please. So this is a street rendering. Is this? Let's see. This is Main Street. Yeah, this is the prior slide is a street side rendering along Guilford, better identifying public amenities like bike racks, tables, and benches, and a potential location for public art. Next slide, please. And finally, this is a street side rendering along Main Street. So we commit that future development of the site will be in compliance with these site plans and renderings, as well as others filed or presented in this matter or submitted to the BZA. Next slide, please. This slide is a depiction intended to show the practical walking distance for employees of AudioChuck utilizing public transportation. While as mentioned, the proposed lot is 900 feet or more from the center line of the bus line. The closest rapid transit station or bus depot is more than a quarter-mile away, walking distance. And recall that the Malnati Pizzeria received a variance last November for a surface parking lot located much closer to the depot. Next slide, please. As you can see, after careful consideration, the BRVA Land Use Committee voted 12-0 to support our variance, conditioned upon additional commitments that were presented to the BZA. Jordan Dillon, the executive director of BRVA, is here to speak, likely on rebuttal because of time, and to address questions that commissioners might have. Next slide, please. And this last slide has to do with the commitments we indeed present to you today. These commitments are slightly modified from the ones presented to the BZA, in part due to points raised there at the BZA, and also to clarify and set forth explicitly that this variance would expire in 5 years and only apply to the petitioner AudioChuck. It would not be transferable by AudioChuck and would therefore not simply run with the property like almost all variances do. These commitments address questions, ideas, and concerns raised by the BRVA. And as you can see, we talked about the 5-year expiration. Number 3, providing existing employees and new hires incentives to move to the Broadville area. Conditions of the construction of the pavement of the lot is mentioned, and so forth. And I would note number 9, the petitioner shall install a security camera or similar protection device to adequately cover the parking lot area. We believe these commitments are substantive and meaningful, and as I said, largely a result of the discussions with BRVA. So in summary, we believe this variance involves a use that, but for the TOD, would otherwise be permitted. The use is on the very periphery of the TOD territory. It serves a private business whose personnel often work non-traditional hours and would need to walk over a quarter-mile to the nearest bus depot, often during nighttime hours. The variance would be limited to the petitioner and expire in 5 years, and the petitioner has agreed to these other meaningful and substantive commitments we've presented. And of course, the BRVA wholeheartedly supports the variance. We respectfully submit that our proposal does not undermine the intent of the TOD and achieves the objectives of the TOD through plan design and written commitments which justify grant of the use and the development standard variances requested. The BRVA unanimously agreed, the BZA agreed, and we hope the MDC will agree as well. Mr. President, we ask that all materials filed in conjunction with this variance case and all presented today or previously presented before the BZA, as well as the BZA hearing, be incorporated into the record of this commission. With that, we respectfully request the favorable consideration of this variance and that the commission uphold the thoughtful decision of the BZA rendered on April 11th.
Questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, will the remonstrator please come forward? Counselors, stay close by, please. I saw a remonstrator. Yes, sir. Come on up. Please introduce yourself and your address, sir.
Chairman Dillon, Tom Healy, Apple Press, offices at 6327 Ferguson in Broad Ripple since April of 1984. I'm an adjacent property owner and received notice of the petitioner's desire to construct this parking lot, attended the 2 Broad Ripple Village Association Land Use Committee meetings, and expressed my opposition based on the envisioned Broad Ripple plan, which specifically creates a hierarchy of for making these kinds of decisions. And the hierarchy is the pedestrian at the top, the bicyclist number 2, transit users number 3, and then motorists number 4. And this particular visionary plan was adopted by this body. I had the privilege of, at the time, serving on the board of directors and served on the steering committee that helped bring this plan to fruition in a 4-year-long process as a way to set the table and the standards for economic development in Broad Ripple. And I think we can say that it has been very successful. Something on the order of $500 million worth of projects have been promulgated, both private and public investment in the Broad Ripple area. And it would be a shame to undermine that plan now at this important juncture in the village's future. At the time, it was aspirational to promote transit-oriented development. We were forward thinking about the Complete Streets initiative. We predated that. And within the plan are embodied very sensible standards for achieving those goals. And now we have transit. Now we have transit-oriented development overlays. We now have an expanded Monon Trail, for example. It was so unpopular 30 years ago that people were saying that it would bring crime, it would reduce property values. We know that's exactly wrong, that something on the order of $1 billion has been spent on the Monon Trail, which incidentally is just outside the door of the G block, which it serves as the office space. And plenty of people use the Monon Trail for commuting. There's no reason not to think that that could be a suitable multimodal access as well, both on foot and on. But I agree wholeheartedly with the administrators of current planning's objections, and because of work commitments, I was unable to attend the BZA hearings, and my long experience in this kind of realm has taught me that simply sending a letter is insufficient, that being able to be in person to speak to an issue is of greater importance. I knew I was not going to be able to do that with work commitments, so I did not submit a letter, and I apologize for that. I probably should have, to have it on the record. But I would like to go a little bit beyond what the administrator mentioned with some of the other concerns I had. One of which was shown on the slide here is that for volunteer organizations like the BZA and the MDC, you need good information. Mr. Dillon, you're good about visiting the sites and that sort of thing, but I don't know that every member of every board and commission will do that. And I think that part of the problem with what was submitted originally in this petition was that it misstated the size and of Main Street, specifically by putting a landscape strip on the north side of Main Street. And as you know, if you've driven past there, no such thing exists. And I did in my letter, which should be part of the packet, I did show some pictures of that. One of the problems with Main Street already, it's an early 19th century right-of-way. It was the path to the train station, where now the Broad Ripple ice cream shop is. So it's a very narrow street. Well, right now we have people who park on both sides of the street, including on the sidewalk, at least 2 wheels on the sidewalk. So it's a very narrow street that is only going to be made worse by having additional automobile traffic generated by this parking lot. And not only does the parking lot not comply with the envisioned Broad Ripple plan, it also does not comply with the North Midtown Economic Development Area plan, which was, I'm trying to think of my notes here, it adopted in 2011, which Harold Rominger's capstone of a career of community service and planning. It stipulated the way the community wanted to develop this area in order to take advantage of former industrial sites along the Monon, as well as main thoroughfare corridors like College, so that we could create robust redevelopment, create employment opportunities, and bring back a part of the community that had been seeing a lack of investment. I think that was the precursor to establishing the Midtown Tax Increment Finance allocation area, which also has been subsequently adopted back in 2013, the year after Envision Broaderpool was adopted. And then now we had the transit referendum in 2016, where hundreds of thousands of citizens actually voted to tax themselves to support transit, to change the last 50 years of planning away from an automobile-oriented approach to a people-centered approach. People on bicycles, people on foot, people of all ages and abilities, people who use transit. Every transit user in some fashion is a pedestrian. So to build accommodations for that, to make our neighborhoods attractive for that. And I think we're succeeding, and it would just be a shame to undermine that by allowing this. And so I'm very opposed to this. There's another piece of this that doesn't tie into all these different plans, and it's this 5-year limit. I think it's really problematic, and all we have to do is think back 5 years ago, where you were 5 years ago, and where you thought you would be in 5 years. All of us have had tremendous upheavals in our lives in that 5 years, and we know that, for example, but for COVID, we would have had a transit overlay district regulations in place well before the times when they were actually promulgated, because that discussion has been ongoing once the transit referendum was accepted. The various planning agencies have been working on this to make it happen. So it's not really fair to say, well, but for, if our client didn't know that there was a transit-oriented development overlay in place. Well, truly it has been, and granted, as a business owner, I understand you can't always take time to pay attention to nuances of public policy discussion, but the fact is, it has been a long-standing discussion. It has had a lot of public input. I mean, unprecedented public input to make this happen. And the mere fact that not everybody can take a day off of work, like I am doing today, to come and testify, shouldn't undermine the fact that the public really has spoken on this, and they've spoken loudly and strongly. They've even chosen to tax themselves for this. That really, and they're counting on you to remember that when you take into consideration these kinds of requests. No one is questioning that this is a great business, that this is the kind of business we want in Broaderpool. My God, that's been part of my volunteer public service to the community for almost 4 decades, is to try and increase business just like this in Broaderpool. But don't destroy the thing you purport to love by undermining plans that have been carefully crafted to create the atmosphere that one purports to love. That's what I say. In any event, I just briefly wanted to say that I'm supportive of the administrator's comments, and I'm grateful that they took the opportunity to do this. I know it's somewhat unprecedented, but I did feel strongly enough that I took time off of work today to come on my own dime to express my support for their efforts, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the remonstrator?
I've got one.
Go.
Mr. Healy, can you talk, you started at the top of the conversation or your remarks about the landscaping on the north side. Can you repeat?
Well, if you could scroll back and I'll show you on the picture.
I'm in the packet.
Okay, back one more. Scroll back another one. There. On the right side, which would be the north, I mean, there's no directional issue on that. You see there's a pedestrian on the sidewalk there? Not that one. Not that one. Get to the right side, opposite side of that street. Okay, that's Main Street, and now that green space where that pointer is, that does not exist. That green landscape, I'd love for it to be there. I'm happy to talk to Dan Parker to see if we can get something like that put in there, but the fact of the matter is, that landscape strip does not exist, and it's sort of, and then the fact that both green spaces on the right side of the sidewalk and on the left side of the site kind of conveys that there's like this spaciousness in this place. It's not. This proposal would actually put a third parking lot in a row on Guilford. That is not the Broaderpool look and feel that we want to encourage. because the site to the south has a parking lot in front, and my photos in the packet on page 2 of my letter demonstrate that. They show how they're used. Part of Envision Broadwell, part of the modifications to the plans is we have to correct these kinds of deficiencies in planning where we take away the setbacks and we stick parked cars in place there. We need to get rid of that. And they couldn't build that way today without a special variance. So there's already to the south, there's a parking lot existing. To the north, on the north side of the northwest corner of Main and Guilford, there is also a parking lot for an office building. So
I don't count those as 3 in a row.
Sir, if this project is approved, if this proposal is approved, that would create the 3rd in a row. That's what would create the 3rd in a row. Yes. And that was my point. So, and again, that undermines the hierarchy we set up in Envision Broadwell. It undermines the transit overlay district. It undermines the community's willingness to be taxed to actually support transit. And for young people to say that a 1,000-foot walk is a bit of a stretch, you know, all I can say is we learned during COVID that public infrastructure like parks, trails, greenways, green space is part of our public health system, and that active lifestyles that involve walking to work or doing something other than sitting behind the wheel of a fossil fuel vehicle is going to help individual health, it's going to help public health, and it's going to help our communities it's going to knit our communities together.
Other questions for the remonstrator? Tom, 1, thank you for being here. 2, you started in 1984?
Well, we actually, November of '83 we incorporated. We moved to Broadwell in April of '84. And
you must have been 18 years old when that happened.
You say the nicest things.
Secondly, Tom, don't leave me.
I'm sorry.
That's my hood, right? I grew up. I'm a Broad Ripple person. But even you, and I appreciate everything you've done for Broad Ripple, and I know of your business and how well you guys have done. But you and I got to agree there's parking problems in Broad Ripple, is there not?
Respectfully, we worked hard for 30 years the community asked for a parking garage, and we worked with the administration at the time to make that happen, to find a way to fund that through parking meter funds, and we built it. And
built it on the corner of College and Westfield.
And yes, but this parcel is also within a really reasonable, comfortable walk. Since that parking garage was built, sir, you know, we have used TIF funds to establish this esplanade along the canal, another 30-year dream for the community, but we actually implemented it. It's nicely lit. If you remember Broad Ripple like I do, there used to be a parking deck over the canal there, and it was not well lit, and it was not safe. We got rid of that. We put in a real nice sidewalk. We've landscaped it. We've made it look attractive.
Tom, I used to go to the Vogue when it was a movie theater. How's that?
What kind of movie theater?
There we go. The good kind.
Good.
All right, thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for being here. You have 5 more minutes on rebuttal if you need it.
Thank you.
Staff.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. Genesis is going to go over the overview of the history and our staff report. Then I'm going to make some additional comments after the end.
Thank you, President Dillon and members of the commission.
Please speak up into your mic.
Thank you, President Dillon and members of the commission. Staff, as you are aware, is recommending denial of the variance that is posed in front of you. This ultimately goes against the Transit-Oriented Development Amendment, which was approved by the MDC in 2021. The comprehensive plan recommendation is village mixed use, which is supposed to be compact and walkable. And overall, it does not align with any plans such as SIT or Indy Moves, the Envision Broad Ripple Plan, and ultimately promotes poor planning practices, favoring automotive uses. The subject site is Zone C4. It is located a quarter-mile away from a transit line on College Avenue. It is in the Broad Ripple neighborhood. Ultimately, a quarter-mile away is a 6-minute walk and a 2-minute bicycle ride. Under the new TOD amendment, a surface parking lot is not permitted. Ultimately, the intent of the transit-oriented development overlay is to promote more compact, walkable, and urban development patterns with more public investment in the transit system. The proposed use would not promote anything. It would promote the opposite of these goals. A surface parking lot is essentially not the highest and best use of this site. In order to, for a variance of use, you need to prove hardship. And in proving hardship, you really need to prove that there is no other use viable for the site. The site is Zone C4. There are permitted uses by right. Also, the fact that there are 2 recently approved variances for the subject site, one for a mixed-use building and the other for an office building. Ultimately, the fact that this proposal or this request is in front of you today kind of shows that maybe the local business owner has outgrown its current location. They do lease in the G Block building, and they are provided 8 parking spaces. On Main Street, there is parking available. Again, it is 1/4 mile from the Red Line. Staff would note that there is a variance of development standards that are being requested. Ultimately, the development standards that are being proposed really shows that it's not sufficient for a surface parking lot. The drive aisle is deficient by 3 feet. The parking spaces are 18 feet in width as opposed to 20. And lastly, the proposed 3.5-foot wall surrounding the site would be in the clear site triangle. These requirements of the ordinance have been put into place and are intended to be followed, primarily for maneuverability and maximize safety for pedestrians in the surrounding, and really just minimizing pedestrian to car interactions. I would like to note that there are several letters of opposition on file, one from the Indy Chamber, another from the MPO, one from the Director of Long Range Planning, Carmen Lethig, who really shows that this promotes the opposite of what we envision for the city of Indianapolis. The proposed surface parking lot would undermine what you have approved in 2021, which is the TOD amendment. Staff is also not supportive of the commitments that have been proposed. For one, it is very hard to enforce a commitment to not be a parking lot in 5 years when the petitioner can come back and essentially it would be legally established. And ultimately, you're just setting a precedent for this neighborhood. I think that if there is a parking issue, I think that this can be fixed with alternate modes of transportation. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions for staff?
Thank you, Mr.
Matt, you want to comment?
Yeah.
Quickly, please.
I just want to make sure we understand, if we remove this transit-oriented development out of this entire discussion, if we remove it, the same methods still apply. They're requesting a use variance for this site. They do not want to follow the law says this, you can't do X. A use variance is there specifically saying, they're arguing that they cannot be building anything else, that this piece of land that they own cannot be anything but a parking lot. Additionally, if that is granted, they're also seeking a development standards variances. So they can't even meet our ordinance and from a development standard variance, development standards to begin with. So one, our ordinance says you can't have a parking lot. Number two, you can't even meet the development standards that the ordinance is applying to it. We have concerns that there are one sheet says 28 people, one sheet says 25, then 22. So regardless, there's 20 some odd employees. The anticipation based on this memo that was given, that they're anticipating up to 48, possibly close rounded to go to 50 within the next year, even 2 years. We're having the same exact problem in the next couple years. We're going to have the same exact conversation in the next couple years. let alone the fact that that staff does not believe that this site is not manageable to have anything but a parking lot. There's enough tax base there. We're having 15 spaces, the handful of them that are allowed on the site, and the on-street parking. Totally understand. I'm really happy that they're able to build, and I truly hope that they can stay where they are, stay in Broad Ripple, keep building, keep flourishing. Myself is a massive fan of podcasting, and I listen to them constantly every day, even while I'm working. But we're coming to this point now is where we're talking about parking, a 15-space parking lot that they're willing to spend money on, to a lot that could be used to build jobs, build possibly housing, possibly even hold on to other things that to drive more tax base, more income into this community. Instead, they want to propose a parking lot. I just really wish that we won't have somewhere of arguably the second, besides downtown, the most popular area in Indianapolis, and hold this piece of land to be just a parking lot and not something that would be massively contributing to the community as a whole. With that, I'd like to withhold some more comments until for rebuttal, please. Thank you.
Final questions for staff. Commissioner?
Matt, I've never seen this, that I can remember, this 5 years subject to the date, that the variance. Like, what is that, and what does that mean? If after 5 years, what happens to that spot?
I mean, we typically don't like seeing that much. Really, it's just a backstop. So what they're proposing, and Council Clark will correct me if I'm wrong, but what they're proposing is to have a use to be a parking lot built to the standards of what they're proposing right here for 5 years. When that 5-year clock is up, they would then be not in zoning compliance. They would have to either A, come back and ask for extension, B, rezone it to make it, well, they have to ask for another variance regardless to make sure that it becomes legal. That could be permanently, they could ask for extension, or they need to tear it out and then put it back to an undeveloped land.
Or build a building as their company hopefully grows.
In a perfect world, that a building will be there.
Thank you. Commissioner, that makes sense to you? Thank you.
I've got a question. Staff's comments were that they've potentially outgrown this space, but I'm having a hard time comprehending what went into the staff's comments about that. If they didn't sign their lease until October, TOD was after it. Mr. Healy's testimony indicates that the city and or the committee stopped work on the TOD during the pandemic. So this seems like a chicken and an egg thing. It also seems that TOD is only applicable to the red line at this point, and so I think we have a problem of catch-up right now.
Yeah, and I was trying to make a point to say that this removing the whole TOD argument.
Matt, talk into your microphone, please.
Sorry, I had to lean over. Removing the whole TOD discussion out of this, though, is that the problem is that, again, you're saying you can have a parking lot by the use variance, but then they can't even meet the development standards variances. And how many variances are they requesting? 5 or 6, Genesis?
Sorry. Technically, like 4.
4?
Yeah.
So we're not talking about just a simple setback variance. We're talking there's multiple things that they're asking relief from. So to me, that tells me that, and truly the whole playing thing in your head, what should dictate the use, what should dictate what what should be on the lot, and to me, the lot dictates what should be. And if the lot's not large enough for what they want to do, that it meets their needs, then it's not large enough, it's not for them. That use that's being proposed should not be there.
Final questions for staff. My last question. The Board of Zoning Appeals unanimously approved this, correct?
They did not unanimously approve it. It was approved 4-1.
Thank you very much. Counselor, you have 5 minutes for a rebuttal for the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, members of the commission. I hope by now you all have seen enough of me to know how much I respect staff and I respect the administrator. And so it's not easy for me to get up here and disagree with them ever, and particularly in this matter. Let me start, though, with Mr. Healy. I know Mr. Healy's property, I don't believe is contiguous. It is close by, and I know he's remonstrated against variances in this area before. But the idea that TOD went through this extraordinary amount of public discussion, I mean, that's not new. I've been doing this 40 years. Every time there's a new commercial zoning ordinance or where Indy rezone, there was a tremendous amount of, as there should have been, with transparency from the city, public discussion of it. But that doesn't mean that there can never be a variance of any provision or term in Indy rezone. That's what boards of zoning appeals are for. If you could never do a variance, we wouldn't need the boards of zoning appeals, I guess. Ms. Hale mentioned this is not the highest and best use. You know, this is a bit of a collision of kind of economic development and land use planning in a part, and really what BRVA and local leaders would like to see happen. But there was also discussion, of course, I think she mentioned that there had been a variance for a multi-use development in an office building, neither of which were developed. And the discussion about, you know, the hardship and so forth, the discussion of what the statute means about having a hardship is well discussed in court law, I would say. And that is one of the criteria for the Board of Zoning Appeals. I would recognize this issue that they've outgrown their current site. I mean, isn't that what we want? We want businesses like this to flourish in Indianapolis, and particularly in Broadway. As to I mean, again, love these guys, but this is a TOD case. I mean, the development standard variances we have requested, in large part, have to do with how we felt it best to develop this site, right? So we could have taken the, the clear site triangle, for instance, that was a variance that was also approved in 2017. Could have reduced the number of parking spaces and not had to file for that development standard. So it could have been arranged a little differently. We felt like the way the outside the wall was planned, providing public amenities, was advantageous to Broad Ripple, and BRVA liked it. So, this is really about TOD. Now, I thought I heard say that C4 does not permit a commercial parking lot. If I didn't hear that or heard it wrong, I disagree. Right? C4 clearly in the tables on Indy rezone allows for a commercial parking lot. And Indy rezone defines a commercial parking lot as a parking lot that is a primary use of land. That's exactly what we're proposing here. So C4 does allow for a parking lot, a commercial parking lot here, and did allow for a commercial parking lot when they signed their lease cat a corner from this property. So, I understand where staff's coming from. I understand that they don't want to open the floodgates for variances involving TOD. I get that. I completely understand that. I do think, as Ms. Westrick kind of discussed, this is an unusual situation. This is a catch-up situation, maybe. This is a great business we want in Indianapolis. We want to grow. We really want it in Broader, but we don't want it moving to our neighbors up north. And I believe with that being a temporary variance, and Mr. Pleasant is exactly right, on that fifth year and a day to use it as a parking lot, they would be in violation of law. And I suspect there would be plenty of people that were taking notice. And by the way, in terms of people that have participated in public policy and land use in Broad Ripple, the BRVA, and I'm sorry, Jordan, I took all your time, has been around since 1969. I mean, they've been through the ups and downs that Mr. Dillon and I have seen in Broad Ripple, and they are wholeheartedly for this. So temporary, exclusive to this particular petitioner, and wholeheartedly supported by BRV.
Thank you, Mr.
Again,
Clark.
we appreciate your favorable
Final question
consideration.
for petitioner. Tom, you have any more comments as remonstrator?
Yes, sir, I do. Just a couple points. When I made the comment about the transit-oriented development overlay district and how the discussion was interrupted by the COVID, the suggestion was that it would have been in place sooner had COVID not occurred. And I think staff will back me up on that, and because I know the community was very involved in that discussion, and I certainly, as a community advocate, participated in those discussions, and it got prolonged because of COVID, and everything kind of had to slow down. So I just wanted to clarify that. As an economic development issue, I think it's important to note that this actually undermines the TIF, and the Midtown TIF came at a time after the City County Council spent a couple of years in intensive hearings. They made modifications to what would be acceptable. The community created a separate review agent board. It's non-binding in its vote, but nevertheless it is another opportunity to review projects to see whether or not projects deserve subsidy, and if they met both the economic development area plan as well as the neighborhood plan, as well as the larger city, the pattern book and the land use plans. We know that putting a parking lot is not the highest and best use. It does not generate significant tax revenues, and so you're locking in an underutilized aspect of this property that undermines the TIF. And I think that would be a shame. After all the work we've gone to create this, after all the success that the TIF has created, we've got more projects coming. It not only for Broad Ripple has been successful, but the benefits have gone beyond Broad Ripple. I think we need to think carefully about this as well. So it's not just a land use issue. The thing about the agreement, it kind of kicks the can down the road a little bit. And once again, think 5 years from now. It may be an entirely different board. It may be an entirely different administration. Who's going to enforce this ultimately? I mean, it's kind of just kicks the can down the road. And from my perspective, it has all it's as enforceable as a pinky swear is, which is not very enforceable at all, honestly. I'm not going to be able to enforce it. Staff's not going to be able to enforce it. I doubt even though you'll drive by it, I don't know that you're going to be in a position to enforce it, sir. I mean, honestly, it doesn't really address the issue at hand, and I think it's important to take a stand now to say, really, in this context, for this project, it really does not work. And I think this is an opportunity for you to do that. Again, not just because I'm asking you to, and not just because staff's asking you to, think about the hundreds of thousands of people who voted to spend their tax dollars to invest in transit, to make our communities radically different than they have been when the automobile was dominant. We realize now, from climate change, from all the different aspects of safety, that making walkable, bikeable streets and sidewalks in our community is something the community as a whole wants. We've enshrined it in both the neighborhood plan, we've enshrined it in the comprehensive plan. Please don't ignore this. I just ask you to really think hard about this. I realize you're in a difficult position. Everyone wants economic development, of course. And I think if they're interested in offering incentives to their employees in some future date, start offering them now. See if they can start using the Monon. See if they can use Uber and Lyft to pick them up. Those kinds of things didn't even exist when we created Envision Broad Ripple. So again, in 5 years, you can't foresee necessarily all the opportunities that will exist. So I think there are options they can exercise now that will allow them to build their business, to thrive, to make a success, to continue their success. And they can do it in Broad Ripple, they can do it in Marion County, and as their employees start moving to the area, into all the apartments that we've through Envision Broad Ripple promoted to build, they'll be able to walk to work. They'll realize that they don't need a parking lot because so many of their employees can walk or bike or take a scooter or Uber or Lyft or rideshare. There are lots of options. And to say that the only path to get to this G block building is from the garage is inaccurate, because again, the Monon Trail is right nearby, as are multiple residential for-rent units, apartment units. So thank you. I appreciate I realize the difficult opportunity this presents to you, but I really hope you will support the administrator in this case. And,
thank you, Tom.
Deny the...
Final questions for administrator? And Tom, thank you for being here. Staff, we're moving forward, so you got a comment, Matt.
Real quick. I just want to make sure the commercial lot and private lot are two different things. Commercial lots for public, private lots for themselves. Those are two different things. Lastly, I am going to just ask the board one more time, and just a quick cleanup to make sure that I would like the commission to uphold the Broad Ripple Vision Plan, the Red Line Strategic Plan. Not only that is the ordinance itself, removing the hard discussion of what they're requesting. Think of like a Board of Zoning Appeals. This is the law. This is the law should be held to them. In our opinion, staff's opinion, they have not brought up to the fact that they were able to prove the hardship at all, or be able to show practical difficulty of why you couldn't even build a lot to the standards if you even granted to begin with. Staff is willing to work with them to try and figure out a solution if the commission's willing to deny these variances, to try and fit a more permanent solution instead of a quick Band-Aid for a year or two before we had the same problem. With that, I want to thank you for this afternoon and our hearing our appeal.
Thank you, staff. Members of the commission, let me walk you through this slowly because we want to make sure we're understanding exactly what we're doing. The Board of Zoning Appeals approved this 4-1. Under our rules, staff didn't like their decision. They brought it to us. Under the rules, it takes a two-thirds vote to defeat this matter. What does that mean? I'm going to make a motion to approve the parking lot. I'll then ask for a second. We have 7 members. The math on two-thirds is 4.66. Under our rules, that means 5 votes. 5 votes to say no have to happen in order to defeat the parking lot. Counselor, did I explain that correctly? Do all the commission members understand me? Everybody got it?
5 votes to defeat.
5 votes to defeat. Yes vote approves the parking lot. No vote is a no vote, but 4 no votes doesn't get it done. It's 5 votes. So I don't want anybody to be surprised if we have a 4-3 matter, it loses, and the parking lot's approved. Everybody got me? We good? Alpha, you good? So here we go. In front of us is 2022 UV2 005, which requires, after the Board of Zoning Appeals win, a two-thirds vote in order to defeat. I make a motion, we approve the motion 2022 UV2 005. Commissioner Robinson, can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Let's now call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, no.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Selm. Selm, no. Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is a yes. So it received 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes, 2 no's. It needed to have 5 no's to be defeated. The petitioner wins. Kevin, Mr. Clark, can you bring Kevin back up to the podium? Mr. Clark, please stay with him. Sir, I want you to hear me loud and clear. You got a great company.
Thank you.
My kids listen to your podcast and talk about them all the time. Tom is very respected by this commission. Please, Mr. Clark, be a good neighbor. And when Tom said I can't do anything about it as I walk by there, you know darn well I can. So I want everything done correctly. It's an important situation. We're going to make sure you do the lot correctly. All right? Yes. Mr. Clark, you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, sir. Mr.
Kevin, you're the type of company we need in this city, man. Keep going, keep growing. We love it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nancy, let's get into the next one quickly, please. Well, I'm going to hear this, and then I'm going to go. I'm throwing the ball to you.
I know you are. There's a thing we have to sign in the
Thank you, President Dillon. The next petition for public hearing, or actually petitions for public hearing, are companion petitions transferred from the hearing examiner for initial hearing, 2022 CZN 824 and 2022 CPL 824 at 200 208 and 34 South White River Parkway, West Drive, 514 South Drover Street, and 1228 and 1236 Oliver Avenue. Approximate addresses: Center Township, Council District 16. Petitioner is Indiana Economic Development Corporation by Andy M. Metzel, requesting a rezoning of 93.23 acres from the CBDS RC, C1 RC, and C3 RC districts to the CBDS RC district to provide for a mixed-use residential, commercial, industrial, and park development. Also requesting approval of a subdivision plat to be known as Reimaging the GM Stamping Plant, dividing 93.23 acres into 15 lots, including the vacation of all remaining streets and alleys in an area bounded by Oliver Avenue, White River Parkway, West Drive, and Washington Street and Division Street. Will all those intending to testify on these petitions this afternoon please stand to identify yourself and be sworn in at this time, either for or against? I see no remonstrators. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Andy Metzel, attorney with the Taft Law Firm, 1 Indiana Square, Suite 3500, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204.
Andy, who are you representing today?
Indiana Economic Development Corporation, sir.
Got it. Andy?
Thank you.
We're going to make this case easy for you. We have previously, in our pre-meeting, had an exhaustive discussion on this matter. The minutes from that pre-meeting will be put into the minutes of this public hearing. All the commissioners have asked questions. All the commissioners have received answers. I would say please throw something at me if I'm not correct, but we're all extremely happy and excited about this new bridge. So we know you're here to buy property, we get it, but the end result is to move forward on this bridge. We even have a couple of suggestions for you to take back to your client. Commissioner Selm loves the name
Green Lawn Bridge.
Green Lawn Bridge. Take that one back. My suggestion is the double H. Guess what that stands for?
I can hardly wait.
The Holcomb Hogsett Bridge. I like to call it the double H. Please take that one back.
Duly noted.
Thank you. I do not believe anybody on the commission has any issues with this. Mindy, you good? Everybody's good? Bill? Good? Alpha?
Good.
Thank you for being here. Are there any remonstrators here? Seeing none. Staff, we know you're for it, and our minutes will be in this meeting. Appreciate it very much. I will now accept a motion to approve 2022 CZN 824. Commissioner, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson, can I have a second?
Second.
I will now call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, yes.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is an aye. It passes 7-0. I will now ask for a motion of 2022 CPL 824. Commissioner Westrick, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Selm, can I get a second?
Second.
I will now call the roll. Blackburn.
Blackburn, yes.
Bruns.
Bruns, yes.
Garver.
Garver, yes.
Robinson.
Robinson, yes.
Selm.
Selm, aye.
Westrick.
Westrick, yes.
Dillon is a yes. Counselor, this commission is very excited about this project. We've determined we've not had a bridge built from scratch for perhaps 50 years in the city of Indianapolis. We're supporting you 100%.
Thank you.
I do like that double H name, but you can take that back. Thank you for being here. It's the easiest hearing you've ever had. Thank you very much.
It is, and I just want to extend the courtesy to the folks from IEDC, from Browning Development, from Elanco, animal health that are here and that have been here. Our city county councilor was here for about an hour and 45 minutes, and she had to depart. But we've had a ton of support, a ton of cooperative effort, and we could not be more excited about this project.
Well, please tell all those advocates we're with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a previous commitment. I'm going to turn the meeting over to the very, very capable Commissioner Garver. She will handle the last hearing moving forward. Commissioner, it's all yours. Commissioners, I apologize, but I'm stuck. I got to go. It's all yours, Commissioner.
Okay, I think Nancy has to read the next hearing in, so we'll wait a sec.
Thank you, Acting President Garver. The next petition, last petition for public hearing, is rezoning petition scheduled for initial hearing. It's 2021 ZON 146 7525 McFarland Boulevard, approximate address Perry Township, Council District 24. Petitioner is Homestead Development LLC by Joseph D. Cauldron, requesting a rezoning of 13.614 acres from the SU1 district to the DP classification to provide for a senior independent living facility and multifamily housing. Would all those intending to testify for this petition either for or against? Okay, looks like we have a number of people. All right. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
We're just going to, I know you guys have been here for several hours, so you know what goes on here, but just one more time, 15 minutes for the petitioner, 15 minutes for all the remonstrators total. So think about that when you're talking, because, you know, and then 15 minutes for the staff, and then 5-minute rebuttals for everybody. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you and good afternoon, Commissioner Garver, members of the Commission, Joe Calderon, 11 South Meridian. I do have a PowerPoint that should be available. There we go. And you have hard copies as well. So, as Nancy read into the record, this is an unusual request, but a good one, we think. This takes 13.6 acres of land that's tax exempt, owned by a church, just surplus property, extra parking, some game courts, and proposes a rezoning to DP, planned development, to provide for 2 distinct types of multifamily. And that's why we did a DP. We have a senior independent facility which is essentially one building, and then we have more traditional market rate type residential. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. The yellow highlighted area is the property in question. It's over 30 acres that's currently owned by the church. Emerson Avenue is a major arterial currently undergoing improvements, adjoining to the east, McFarland Boulevard to the west, and we have various land uses as shown on this context map. We'll get into that further in a moment. Next slide. The current zoning. Right now, as mentioned, this site is SU1. For those of you who may not recall, SU1 is limited solely to that of church or religious use. There is D6 and D7 to the north. Those are both multifamily categories. That's what we have adjoining to the north and northwest. There is D3 single family to the west, and I would suspect most of those folks are in that category. That's single family residential. There's CS commercial to the east. Sorry for the 2 in there. There is no C2 anymore. That's commercial special. And then C1 office type use to the south. We believe, as does staff, that our proposal would be consistent with both the existing zoning as well as the development pattern. The comprehensive plan is suburban neighborhood, which recognizes a variety of lighter residential use and even in some cases light commercial use. For multifamily to kind of fit within suburban neighborhood, the land pattern book identifies certain characteristics. One, it wants to see it located on an arterial street. We have that here. It's Emerson Avenue. Two, they want to see parking to the interior. They'd rather have the buildings be on the outside. We've done that with the exception of one row of parking along Emerson serving the senior building. And then they want more appropriate building height and massing, not to be more than times and a half of the existing development pattern. Our proposal is across McFarland Boulevard from the single family. We've got significant setbacks, so we're not going to be staring straight down on top of that neighborhood. You can see on the next slide, the zoning map is what I'm talking about. You can see the SU1, the D3 to the west, as mentioned, the multifamily to the north, the CS to the east, and the C1 to the south. So there's really quite the mix of zoning. It's not just that we're intruding onto a single family dominated area in this case. Next slide. Let's speak very briefly about the benefits of this rezoning. We have a current owner that has been an anchor in this neighborhood for some time, the Southport Presbyterian Church. They own over 30 acres. By selling this ground to my client, Homestead, the existing church gets a financial shot in the arm, yes, but it also allows the church to stay, allows their school to stay. They're not abandoning the site. They don't need the acreage anymore. The sale, obviously, by allowing the church to stay in its site, keeps that neighborhood anchored with a solid religious use. Just as importantly, and you heard staff mention this in the previous case, putting property onto the tax rolls and expanding our tax base is hugely important. Right now, all of the church property is tax exempt. Nothing goes to help support schools, functions of government, etc. My client's willing to put in $40 million plus investment into this property, which will yield approximately $1 million a year in property tax revenue that's not currently flowing into the city and county coffers. We think that's a huge benefit as you consider what other types of uses, assuming the church would sell to somebody else, might be important. Next slide. The DP process is pretty involved. Just to remind you, we filed this petition back in December, so we've been 5 months in the making to get here. We had our DP meeting in early January. That's where the city agencies themselves participate. At that meeting, we were given comments to reduce curb cuts. We now have 1 curb cut on Emerson, 1 on McFarland. That's it. We agreed upon a scope of a traffic impact study, and there was a request to help build a bus stop shelter on the south end of the site. We did get our traffic impact study completed, reviewed, and accepted by DPW in March. You can see comments in the staff report regarding that. All of the studied intersections, both within and outside of the scope of the development, have acceptable levels of service after building this proposed multifamily complex. Intuitively, you can understand why the senior component would not generate much traffic. They typically don't. But even assuming all of the proposed multifamily, all movements, including from the site to Emerson to McFarland, and even the intersection of Southport and McFarland will operate at acceptable levels of service. No new improvements are made. Emerson is undergoing improvements as we speak. We revised all of our plans in response to DP comments, as well as neighbor meetings, which my client will talk about, and we submitted those to both the staff in March and April. Next slide. I'd like to introduce Matt Canterbury from Homestead Development, and he's going to speak a little bit about the project specifically.
Members of the Commission, thank you very much. I'm Matt Canterbury, President Homestead Development, 369 East Livingston Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. As mentioned, and I'll be very brief just to be respectful of your time, as I know we're taking a little longer than anybody wished. Draw your attention up. I'd like to talk about the products we're bringing to the area as part of this proposed development plan. Aligned to the west and south are the multifamily buildings. Aligned to the northeast is, in fact, the senior product. Two pieces. Next slide, please. Homestead Senior Living is a product that is independent living. There's no acute care. There's not any memory care and or that of assisted living. These are independent apartment dwellings, 3 stories tall, surrounded around what we think is a big differentiator for our resident. Our resident has the opportunity in their golden years to really be part of the community of which they live in. That community is centered around a central corridor of 10,000 square feet of what we call an amenity village. The images are up on the screen. Next slide, please. The more contended component of this, as you'll be hearing here shortly by the remonstrance, has to do with the multifamily component. The multifamily we're bringing to this site is 172 units. It is 60% 2 bedrooms, 40% 1. This product, by residential standards, is a asset class B product. We, Homestead, both develop, construct, and manage. And I will tell you, our management will manage this to the point of an A class asset class. To our direct north is what would be considered currently a C asset class, which is managed very nicely itself. You'll notice in the bottom left, and as a result of some of the changes we made to the density of this, as well as to the height, and listening with some of the community members as well as city, we have in fact stepped the buildings. That is an image of the buildings that are alongside of McFarland to reduce the overall density along that interior road, which sits 120 feet across the street with setbacks to adjacent property. Next slide, please. I want to cover real quick the demand and the need in very quick fashion, and there's a lot of highlights there to obviously lead your eyes. Really, what we're getting to in all these stats, this is done by a third party. They're called Vote Strategic Incorporations Insight, Vote Strategic Insight. What they do is they're a professional that works throughout the region, looking at basically trends in population as well as needs for different assets. To summarize in the red, the population growth in this area is up, and the vacancy being low amongst current multifamily, plus the rents rising rapidly, mean that the demand is high. So these statistics here are showing that. Now, what did we look at? We didn't just look at that, but we asked them to look at also in the key demographic areas. The key demographic areas, which on the next slide I'll be able to get into more, please, really are that in the bottom. So at the bottom, that talks about blue-collar workers, single parents, some roommates, and young couples. Okay, so within those specific age ranges, that's anything from 25 to 45. And then for the senior product, there is population growth additionally of that of 65 and above, which is our marketplace for that product. So within these, I'd like to also point to, even outside of the professional study, the newspaper last week spoke specifically, the Indianapolis Business Journal, to all of the industrial growth in Greenwood, and all the statistics are in fact on the screen, but just to say it's going to generate no less than 2,100 jobs just by that growth alone. Next slide, please. As mentioned by Joe, we did have meetings with the community. We had 2 of those, and there were multiple observations or concerns in the top right. As to move through those, we've already covered many of them. one of which, though, is going to be in the bottom right, and I'd like to talk about the stress on the stormwater. The bottom right graph shows over a 50% reduction versus what's out there today. What's out there today is a greenfield. Our catchment and the standards by which we're required to operate and engineer this site will reduce any flow by 50% over what is there. Next slide, please. The last item here is something that I will actually push to the remonstrance period, but these are some opportunities to handle the differentiation between buffering as requested as a potential result by the neighborhood and that of sidewalks that are requested by staff. I do believe this is a discussion point. And finally, before we get any further, I would like to introduce the senior pastor of the Southport Presbyterian Church to speak.
Thanks for having us today. Rob Hoke, 7525 McFarland Boulevard, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46237 is the church's address. Southport's been in the community for about 200 years, been an anchor in the community. Some of our founding members, names of Smock and Macaulay and Wishard would be folks we've been deeply involved. You might know us a little bit more by our involvement with Richmond Hill Neighborhood Explosion as a primary group that was providing care and relief for them, hosting code enforcement, fire, et cetera. We are hosting the FOP Memorial Service tomorrow, deeply involved in the community, as well as living as good neighbors. We've been hosting the HOA for McFarland Farms for 4 years and intend to do so going in the future. We want to live well with those around us so they may thrive. We began to look at neighbors, and we thought we would, what would fit well would be a retirement community, senior living, or residential, and who knew we were going to get both? And that's what we're looking at. The reason why we decided to sell is that property is not used, with the exception of increasingly homeless population that moves into our shelter house, and we routinely have to help relocate. Teens enjoying Friday and Saturday nights in the dark corners, and illicit businesses out of cars between women and men. We have 4 goals really with this, and the first is that we want to pay down, if not entirely pay off, a mortgage that we've been navigating through since 1998. We want to provide, so we can provide our staff with more appropriate pay. And they're gifted and talented. We could never pay them enough. We just want to pay them more. We also want to do some capital expenditures on our property and live well as neighbors.
I'm sorry, Pastor, but your 15 minutes are up. So you guys, you get 5 minutes for rebuttal after the staff, so you can finish up then. Thank you.
I think you've been provided a package, but I do have one additional package which includes some of the petitions. So you do have a package to refer to. I'm sorry, I don't have electronic. My name is Mary Jo Kennelly, and I am representing our Homeowners Association of McFarland Farms. I've lived in the community 32 years. My address is 7332 Poppy Seed Drive in Indianapolis. This community was originally called McFarland Farms Development, and in that development, we have our 423 homes, 452 current multifamily with Sundance apartments, restaurants, hotels, daycares, and it is a very diverse community, and doctor's offices. And Southport Pres has been a great neighbor through many of these years, obviously. What we have are letters before you in your package, and there are letters in opposition to this supporting the 400 or more signatures that we have from residents here. Letters from our City County Councilman, Mr. Dilk, and our State Senator, Aaron Freeman. All feel like multifamily is taking over Perry Township and it's beginning to be an issue. Our true concerns truly are the drainage in the area, and I know they're addressing some of those issues, but currently we have flooding in the area currently and have over the last 4 years substantially. Most recently, in the last couple of years, and you'll see pictures of those, are pictures of cars flooded on the boulevard, and that is, I believe, number B in your packet. That was after an inch of rain in the morning along the boulevard. And there's drainage map right behind that, behind the additional pictures that show you that current drainage, and this is the map that we pulled from the city of Indianapolis, shows all the arrows pointing to where all the drainage goes to the very side of our problem, which if you'll see in the center, there are 2 larger ponds. And McFarland Farms residents are around, obviously you can see that because of all the lot development. That is where all the drainage goes from Stop 11 to Poppy Seed and the McFarland Boulevard. Currently, Sundance Apartments, who manages the 452 multifamily, is in litigation with the city of Indianapolis on how to repair that. In the meantime, we have damage to our property. Our pond has gone up 4 foot in 1 day and down 4 foot in 1 day. We have residents like myself that live around that pond that manage and keep River Rock. Our own homeowners association spent over $12,000 2 years ago to put new riprap on the north side of our pond, and the erosion has been substantial. In the meantime, while this litigation goes on, we still have a problem. So when we make the assumption that additional development, looking at these maps, might increase that problem, you can understand our concern. Then we have a problem or concern, and I guess I want to mention one more thing about the water. When we look at our original PUD that was started in the late 1980s, when this whole development, which include commercial, residential, multifamily, in document 9, it says, prior to the issuance of any drainage permits for any portion of the real estate described in 88-Z-2 through 88Z-11, a master drainage plan encompassing all of the real estate, not just this impacted land, should be assessed and be approved by the Department of Public Works. I don't know that that's been done. We've asked, but we have not seen that. We have been in communication with Julie Farr of Marion County Drainage, who actually came out in the last 30 days and in communication to our board indicated it's a mess. And currently, there are manholes that water completely bubbles up after an inch of rain and falls into the street. You can still see gravel and dirt all through the main drive, which is the boulevard, because of it always washes up and then washes down. And it washes up and washes down dramatically in a short period of time. The next concern we have is green space and the lack thereof on the southeast side of Indianapolis. The boulevard is managed, and it goes from Stop 11 to Southport Road. Our homeowners association manages and maintains, mulches, mows, all of that property. There is over 11 acres of mowing just on the sides of those roads. There's only sidewalks on our side, of which we manage, maintain, clean up, pick up after. Currently, we have 452 residential homes or homeowners that also come over there and enjoy our walkways and come through our neighbors. The hotels have visitors. The only walking spaces on our side and our sidewalks. So the lack of green space. In the last 2 weeks, Lilly Endowment has donated a grant of $25 million for green space to the city of Indianapolis. Indianapolis on the southeast side has zero. This was a perfect opportunity, if we could have been involved, is to look at what Indy Parks could do. Is this an opportunity for the city of Indianapolis to make an investment into our green space? We don't have the Monon, we have Perry Park. Perry Park is a pool and an ice rink. There is no green space. You have a huge opportunity to create that conversation. We have a meeting tomorrow with 2 individuals representing your Indy Parks to talk about opportunities on green space and the lack thereof. 2 years ago, we had an assessment done about forming a crime watch committee. In doing so, we had police officers prior to COVID that would come very often to our homeowners meetings once a month, and they'd helped us do an assessment and prepare for that with increased crime, which we know happens. They even commented that along our boulevard, our walking space, he can see the connectivity. It was really great. Eye contact, people walking their children, kids riding their bikes all along the boulevard. Traffic is going to increase when you add 372 multifamily homes. People over 65 don't quit driving because I'm over 65. And I walk that boulevard every day. So I don't want to pretend that that they're not active. They're more active today than they ever used to be. Also, our school systems, as you are more than aware. Perry Township Schools approved another referendum because we can't afford our school systems, because all of the multifamily, we have a great supply of multifamily on the south side. And now we have a further hole. There's going to be children coming out of this multifamily that are going to attend our schools. Our average school size for Perry Township is 30 to 35 students a classroom. And we're already funding the referendum. Our community donates through taxes that are due next week, another increase in taxes, a referendum, over $1.6 million to the revenue. And I appreciate that the new land would donate to the coffers of the city of Indianapolis, but it also comes with a cost. It costs to us, our dollars, who have been in your community for a long time, a cost to traffic on the boulevard. Emerson Avenue is under construction. It is now used, the boulevard is used as a pass-through to get by. The ambulance services go there. We have 6 senior housing communities in that area already. St. Francis is just south of us. Sirens are going up and down the boulevard because they're not going up and down Emerson because they can't get there. It is a nightmare. It will be a nightmare for 2 years because it is going over 65 South. This isn't just widening of a road. They are going over Federal Highway, and that is just beginning and is not expected to end until the end of 2024. So the impact to our neighborhood is vast. Excuse me, referring to my notes. So the increased traffic, the increased stress on our schools, number one, most certainly, is the core services of drainage. And then we live in a nice community. We have a great pride. We're glad to be Marion County residents. But when people leave, they leave this county. That's hard to watch. I've been a resident of Indianapolis for 66 years. And people, when they're leaving, are frustrated, are going and taking those dollars somewhere else. We don't have much crime. But because areas in our district do have more crime, and God love them, the police officers are being where they need to be, we don't have anybody monitoring speed limits and activity going in our neighborhood because we aren't the most critical area. But again, we provide $1.6 million to the coffers and are possibly getting less service than we did several years ago, which may be the standard, but isn't that sad? In summary, I just want to say we appreciate you listening to us today. There may be some others here that want to speak if we still have time, but please consider our concerns. We feel they're very valid. The water, the sewer, the damage, the traffic, and what it will do to our neighborhood. Our boulevard is beautiful. I know you may not be familiar with the South Side, and I wish you would because it's a boulevard. It's not just a straight up and down street. It is a winding boulevard, beautifully landscaped to the tune of over $65,000 of our dollars annually. We hope that you consider it, but if you're compelled to approve this, we hope you look at sidewalks. If we want to increase green space, it's a priority for the city. I know it is. I used to sit on Indy Parks Foundation board. We should be looking at green space, walking paths, and improving the south side in Indianapolis. There are no paths of that $25 million that Lilly Endowment has given us that is going anywhere but north, east, and west. Not one nickel. This is a time for Indian Parks to look at it and the city to consider doing that. And this is a perfect land. It still provides the church a solution. We also said there's other solutions as well, and we'd love to be a part of it. We just know things change. We're not saying it stays the same. We think it's a very diverse. We enjoy the diversity, but this doesn't complement, in the best use, to our opinion, this land use. And we hope that you consider that, and we hope that you value that for us. And I hope you understand, we feel like Mr. Dilk and Mr. Freeman's support in opposing this means something. Those were our elected officials representing our community, of which most of us live there. The average homeowner in our community is 18 years. That's pretty amazing. So if there are some other speakers, I'm going to let them talk.
My name is Denise Bain. I live at 7525 Perilla Court. My home is across the street from the area that they're wanting to put the apartment building in. This will greatly affect my privacy. We moved to our home 22 years ago. We moved there with a nice park-like setting behind our house. Very nice to look at. But with this new apartment building, as I said, I feel that we will not have the privacy that we have now, and I'm fearful of our property value going down if we were to sell, that this apartment complex would be right behind us in our backyard, and we're very concerned about that. Since I do live right in the area that they're planning to do the apartment building, My home, there are several homes that will be affected by that. My home in the front yard my home sits farther back, and then in the backyard, I'm closer to McFarland Boulevard. So my property would be closer than any of the others that are affected. Since we do live across the street, we do see kids playing soccer all the time, kids playing basketball. There's a softball court there. We see that happening all the time. And there is a nice shelter house. This is a very nice green area for our community, and we do not have a lot of green space. And I think it's a very nice asset to have in our neighborhood. And as I said, we see people all the time making use of that area. And so I just hope that you will consider our petition that this not go through.
Okay, thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Apparently our clock got messed up, so we're about 5 minutes off. So I'm gonna have to stop you guys right now, but you will again get a 5-minute rebuttal, and we're gonna hear from staff. First, does anybody have any questions for the remonstrators? I forgot about that. Okay, then we're going to go to staff. I'm a rookie, sorry.
Thank you, Acting President Garver, members of the Commission. You'll know staff is recommending approval of this request. Mr. Calderon has explained the DP and what the process is involved with that. Now, again, it's consistent with what, and you've heard this before, the comprehensive plan. This is the suburban neighborhood recommendation or typology, and it is, staff believes it's compatible with that surrounding development, which you have multifamily there to the north, you've got single family across to the west, and then you have you've got the church there to the south. Staff would mention there was some comments about sidewalks. The project that is going on now with DPW will include sidewalks along Emerson, and with any development that occurs and comes forward with rezoning here in our office, we require sidewalks. So there will be sidewalks that will be installed along McFarland Boulevard. The other thing staff has requested is that this developer contribute, and we've been in touch with the DPW and Indigo to upgrade the bus stop that is south of this. It's not on this property, but it is south of this property, and they have agreed to do that. So again, the staff believes that this is an appropriate request. Suburban neighborhood allows single-family housing, but it's interspersed again with your attached multifamily housing. So it is compatible and it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We hear a lot about drainage and traffic always with all our projects. Drainage is an issue that is addressed during the permitting process, and there obviously will be a drainage plan that will be submitted and reviewed by engineers. And traffic, as has been indicated, there's been a traffic study, and our traffic engineers have looked at that study and believe that it is appropriate. And with that, staff would be glad to answer any questions because we are recommending approval.
Kathleen, you already answered my question. Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions for staff?
I have a question about, since it was brought up about drainage, what's the impact that this proposed development would have on the drainage problem of that neighborhood?
Well, that's going to have to take a response from engineers that look at this, but you'll note that on the site plan there is an area for a detention pond for this, and that obviously will be reviewed. That the shape of that, the size of that may change during the permitting when they get to the construction drawings portion of the project. But again, that is reviewed by the drainage engineers down at DPW, and I believe that they also have consultants that they will bring on board too and look at the drainage. But that will definitely be, with the size of this development, this will be reviewed carefully.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go back to the petitioners for a 5-minute rebuttal.
Again, Matt Canterbury Homestead, thank you again for your time. Staff appreciates your diligence in the report. A couple aspects, and I would like to be just very, very clear about this. As it pertains to police protection, walks, drainage, should there be an issue after our improvements of the area, and traffic, should there be any issues down the road, we would stand alongside of McFarland Farms to fight hand in hand with and for that. We believe that as a part of our development, we have gone through all the engineering standards as dictated by the city, as well as the state and federal government to look at that. So as an example, within the packets, we have talked about and shown already a 50% reduction. So that is going to help solve any problem that does exist. Further than that, regarding the walks and buffers, on the screen right now, it does talk about this. Now, I do want to point out where we are 100% aligned. Our residents will be walking. Our seniors will be walking. We allow small dogs. They will need to be walked. As of right now, all the way from Southport Road down to Emerson on the east side of McFarland, there exists 0 walk space. Our solution on the left was to continue, and it was as a result of the meetings with the neighbors, was to continue a buffering plan that is to our north with the apartment complex. To the right is what would need to happen should we have a walk, is that walk would be there. Now, I will like to say, though, that we are happy to do that walk. We would love for that walk to be in concert with a larger mindset with the city to go ahead and walk the entire east side of McFarland. As we get further in to some of the comments that were made, if the option is a park, I just want to mention that this would not have the tax basis. It would not hit the needed amount of housing in this area, nor would it solve for the walkability that doesn't exist there today unless it's part of a bigger plan from Southport to McFarland. We did hold 2 meetings, as mentioned. If you go to the next slide by chance. And that is a little difficult to read, so I will help you with it. And some of those meetings were highly contested, and we hope to bring facts to the table such that we can discuss them all. But at the end of the day, in summary, we're proposing a compliant PD plan with staff approval. We've considered community and city feedback for the development plan. The density was reduced by 30 apartments. Traffic study's been presented and agreed upon with city review standards. There's been a reduction of 1 driveway onto Emerson. There's an agreement to tie in the new Emerson bike and walkway, as staff mentioned, as well as an agreement for an accessible transit stop along Emerson. The reduction of building height along McFarland to a combined 2 to 3 story building, as I mentioned before. We've also engineered the retention pond per the standards I mentioned before. And as I said, we will solve for the sidewalks and in fact stand along with the rest of the community for walkability throughout the area. We're available for any questions as needed. 1 second.
Thank you. I'd just like to summarize a couple of things for the commissioners. And that is the DP process is a very detailed, serious process. We've been through that. We've revised plans. We've submitted traffic studies. We did drainage studies. All show that the issues that are legitimate concerns are going to be resolved via this plan. This will also add tax base sorely needed for this county, help the church, and be consistent with not only the development pattern, but our comprehensive plan. That's why we have staff support. It's very easy for folks to sign a petition, we don't want apartments. I get it. I do a lot of these things. The fact of the matter is the legitimate issues have all been taken care of in our plan, studied, submitted, and reviewed by staff. Finally, I did reach out to Councilor Delk 2 weeks ago, never heard a thing, and he has every right to listen to whoever his constituents are that make the most noise. I totally respect that, but we did reach out, and we just didn't hear anything from him in that regard. So with that, we hope that when you balance all of these factors that you will agree that this is a project worthy of your approval today. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioners? Okay, we'll hear from the remonstrators. 5 minutes, please.
Real quickly, I just want everyone to stand that is here representing McFarland Farms in opposition to this. And here is the actual petitions, and it isn't easy to get 400 signatures out of 423 homeowners. And I think you all respect that. I just guess I want to, remind everyone that we appreciate it. We have a diverse plan, but, when I have 2 flat tires and a drainage problem currently, telling me that you're going to find a solution when they add additional services is like saying, well, I still have 2 that work. It doesn't work for us. It doesn't work. That drainage system is a huge mess. Look at those pictures after an inch of rain. And if we can't fix what's currently there, if the city doesn't think that's important, but they think it's okay because there's tax dollars here, we've got our priorities all mixed up. And, if we were in communication with how that's being repaired, how that's being worked, with who we've talked to, and Aaron Freeman was at your meeting when we had an open meeting, and he is our senator that is also in opposition. So, I strongly ask that we have, if this is something you're compelled to approve, we have a burn with the same distance from the boulevard. We have the sidewalks. They're willing to pay for some. The city should be able to pay for them all. Telling me there's green space on Evanston Avenue tells me I can go ride a bike between I-65 and a 4-lane road. That's not green space. That's more concrete pond area. That you're not going to tell your child to go ride between I-65 and Emerson Avenue, because that's where those sidewalks are going. It's not in a green space. You drive our boulevard, that's green space. So I appreciate the city's putting sidewalks for accessibility for those that ride the bus. That bus is used, but it mostly is used for people that get on and off in front of the hospital, which is just about, half a mile south of us. There's not a whole lot of usage along that Emerson Avenue. Hopefully that will improve when Emerson is widened. But appreciate it. Thank you for your service and time. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anybody else from the remonstrators who wanted to speak? We've got a minute.
I have a question for Mary Jo. Mary Jo, right? Yes. I'm sorry.
No,
Finish your testimony. I don't want to take up your testimony time.
I'm just going to say my name is Debbie Anderson. I've lived there for 29 years. My daughter went to Southport Presbyterian Christian School, and we have lots of issues with crime, with people in the area, people walking the area from the apartments that are already there, and also the drainage issues. What do you do if you run into an area where you can't get through? They come into our neighborhood. We already have plenty of people driving our neighborhood, checking porch pirates, checking to steal stuff. And I know, because I've been retired a year now, and I walk every day with my dog. And so I see lots of people that do not belong in our neighborhood, that are not part of our neighborhood walking through. So safety is a very big issue.
Debbie, can you state your address, please, quickly?
4249 Bayleaf Circle, Indianapolis.
Questions?
Mary Jo, you mentioned your affiliation with the Parks Foundation, so
I was on the board years ago.
So you're likely aware of the lack of opportunity for traditional trail development on the south side?
Yep.
As it stands, I know we've looked at things like high-tension corridors, bike lanes. It sounds like you're meeting with the Parks Department. Will re-engage those conversations?
Yes.
Do you guys have some options that you want to present to them, or I'm just kind of curious how you're going about the linear
We actually
park
reached
and
out
green
to
space.
them once we found out this land was for sale. I mean, it's 13 acres, and it has connectivity. It has school connectivity. It has, visitors have restaurants all within walking distance of us, and our boulevard would be in addition to that. So that connectivity and starting to build the bridge, and we're trying to say what can be done. We're just wanting to start those conversations. So that is our meeting tomorrow. But, those are the things. We want to be a part. We know the church needs and wants to sell it, and we understand life changes. That's not what we're a part of, not trying to say we don't want change. But can we be a part of something that's better complemented to our...
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll hear from staff.
Thank you, Acting President Garber, members of the commission. The only comment staff would make is that we will also, when we review those plans, to make sure there's going to be interior connection to those sidewalks. I know that sometimes comes up as an issue, that they'll put sidewalks within a development, but then there's no connections to the sidewalks within the right-of-way, and we're going to make sure that that occurs so that all those opportunities are available to the pedestrians. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will go to a vote. Well, no. I'll vote or a motion? Okay. Yeah. So I will move to approve petition 2021 ZON 146. Can I get a second from Commissioner Westrick?
Second.
Okay, we'll go through the list. Blackburn?
Blackburn, no.
Bruns?
Bruns, no.
Robinson?
Robinson, no.
Selm?
Selm, no.
Westrick?
Westrick, no.
And Garver is no. The motion was not passed. Any other business to hear? Oh, okay. Any other business before this commission? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.